Chapter 839. Everyone heard Qianma's complaint, but there was nothing they could do. If they wanted to attack Gu Fei, the melee classes had to go up to the roof. However, the system didn't provide any jump skills in the parallel world. If players wanted to jump, they had to do it themselves. No one could jump onto the roof. As for the ranged classes, they could still attack. However, they were unable to do anything to Gu Fei. At first, Forever had hoped that 8,000 Miles Drunk would be able to quickly exhaust his mana by casting spells, but after more than 10 minutes, he was still casting spells as he normally would. Even an orthodox mage that added intelligence wouldn't be able to continuously cast spells for so long without needing to replenish their mana. Forever knew that the other side definitely had some sort of mana regeneration equipment, so he stealthily looked for an angle to move forward. Once he was within range, he hurriedly used identification. They always wanted to see Gu Fei's equipment to determine Gu Fei's mana consumption and replenishment cycle time, and then come up with a strategy. As the top player on the night leaderboard, Eternal was also level 43. He wasn't the only one. Everyone in the Eagle Party was at level 43 in the parallel world. They didn't have any problem using Identify on Gu Fei. Unfortunately, the mana return was a piece of equipment that surpassed their current level. Even with Identify, they could only get a question mark. Eternal didn't know what he wanted to know, but he made a more valuable discovery. The Windchaser emblem. This piece of equipment could be obtained through a bounty quest, but it didn't have any grade to speak of. After appraising it, Eternal's gaze swept across the Windchaser emblem, and the random teleportation function of the wanted target appeared before his eyes. Eternal finally knew why this person could hunt them down so quickly and accurately. It was because of the PK points that some of their members had. Eternal had never heard of this function, so he couldn't be wary of it. He wasn't annoyed that his members didn't clear their PK points in time. Since he already knew the other party's methods, there would always be a way to deal with it. He was not someone who only knew how to blame the heavens and blame others. At this moment, he had already begun to quickly calculate in his mind. In the end, he heard several people shouting at him, "Forever!" Eternal responded subconsciously. Then, he noticed that the sky above him darkened. He looked up and saw Qianli flying down from the roof like a huge bird. Although Gu Fei kept attacking Qianma, he knew that it wasn't enough to kill these top players. The reason why he kept attacking Qianma was not because Qianma's attacks had caused him to suffer twice. Of course, he did have some thoughts of revenge, but that was just along the way. Gu Fei's real purpose was to choose a target and attack it relentlessly. This way, he could numb the others and make them gradually lower their guard. Gu Fei knew that in order to kill these top players, he had to rely on a series of close-range attacks. The street was the river, and the 19 members of the Eagle group were the fish. Gu Fei, who was standing on the roof, was the fisherman on the riverbank. But even Gu Fei didn't expect his luck to be so good. The first one he caught was the leader of the Eagle Party, Eternal. Gu Fei didn't know Eternal, nor had he seen him before. But he knew that this was definitely him. This wasn't the first time that Gu Fei had seen this person giving orders to the Eagle Party. As for Forever taking the bait, it had nothing to do with Gu Fei's fishing skills. It was because he saw that Gu Fei had an endless supply of mana that he came forward to scout. In the end, he didn't manage to scout what he wanted, but he did manage to scout the new function of the Windchaser emblem. And Gu Fei wanted to numb the opponent and lure them into his trap. But he ended up baiting them with his continuous spell attacks. These two fellows had the intention to plant flowers, but the flowers never bloomed, while the willows grew shade unintentionally. Gu Fei's sword had already slashed downwards. Always was lost in his thoughts. He only reacted when he heard the shouts of his brothers, but the night streamer was already right in front of his face. Eternal hurriedly raised his sword to block the attack. He raised his hand and cast a black mark on Gu Fei's body. The paladin's curse skill was like teleportation. It didn't have a flight time like an archer's attack or a mage's spell. Gu Fei couldn't dodge this kind of attack. The black light turned into a mark and flashed in the center of Gu Fei's head. Gu Fei saw that he didn't take any damage. He didn't know what it was, but his skills weren't interrupted, so he continued to slash down. Eternal's reaction was too late. He wanted to block the attack, But Gu Fei knew that he wouldn't make it in time, so he didn't use any tricks. The sword accurately struck Eternal's shoulder. Flames poured down, instantly igniting half of Eternal's body. The Eagle Team's mages were all shocked. They all knew that the dual flame flash would cause the target to take continuous fire damage. However, Gu Fei's dual flame flash had such an impactful burning effect. They didn't know how much proficiency he had in this skill. Compared to the dual flame flash of an ordinary mage, it was like a completely different skill. Eternal took this attack, and his HP dropped by a large chunk. Bystanders might not think that losing so much HP was something to be afraid of, but people were different. They all had different equipment and different defenses. The fact that Gu Fei's attack had taken away Eternal's HP was enough to shock him. But he immediately cursed himself for being an idiot. In that instant, he had hit Gu Fei with a Dark Paladin's Intelligence Curse, which weakened the target's intelligence stat. Eternal knew that he had reacted too late, and that there was no way he could have dodged that attack. As such, he quickly cast an Intelligence Curse on Gu Fei in order to reduce the damage of the attack. However, when he saw that the damage was still so terrifying, he realized that Qianli was an agility-focused mage. Where would he find the intelligence to weaken his curse? Qianli's magic damage depended on his equipment, skill proficiency, and finally his intelligence. If Eternal wanted to weaken Gu Fei's intelligence to limit Gu Fei's damage, it was clear that there was a problem with his intelligence. Eternal didn't hesitate to cast another curse. At the same time, he prepared to dodge to the side. However, Gu Fei's attacks were extremely fast. When Eternal wanted to run, Gu Fei had already landed on the ground and followed up with a second attack. A lightning palm slammed into Eternal's head. Lightning palm had a knockback effect, but Gu Fei had used it from above. It did have a knockback effect, but it couldn't bury Eternal in the ground. Eternal felt his body tremble, and his feet seemed to have grown roots in the ground. He couldn't move at all. Eternity's heart trembled, but Gu Fei had already landed in front of him with a smile. He raised his sword, and a series of clanging sounds rang out. Dual Flame Flash was on cooldown, but Gu Fei wasn't idle. He attacked Eternal with a normal attack. Knight's equipment was similar to Warrior's. Eternal wore black armor, but his physical defense wasn't bad. Although the Knight Streak sword's physical damage wasn't low, Gu Fei hadn't fully activated the sword's coefficient. His magic damage was boosted by the Knight Spirit Robe, his Mage class, his magic mastery skills, and skills like Dual Flame Flash. In comparison, the Knight Streak sword's physical damage was just normal. Gu Fei didn't have any strength, so when it hit a top-tier player with top-tier equipment, it was a bit pitiful. This wave of attacks was far more dazzling than the Dual Flame Flash and Lightning Palm, but it was all bark and no bite. Eternal was shocked to death at first. He thought that this was another super powerful skill, but after taking 2 hits and seeing the damage, he felt at ease. In that short moment, Eternal was stunned by the Lightning Palm. Gu Fei's Dual Flame Flash's cooldown was also over. He had already cast a skill, stepped forward, and turned around. The twofold Dual Flame Flash had already been cast. Eternal didn't dare to fight Gu Fei head-on. As soon as he felt his body recover, he immediately ran to the side. However, Gu Fei's sword had already landed on his body, and the large amount of magic damage caused Eternal's heart to jump. As a Dark Knight, he chose to increase his agility. He didn't invest any HP, and relied on his top-tier equipment to increase his HP and defense. Gu Fei's 2 Dual Flame Flash and 1 Lightning Palm would have killed anyone else. Eternal, who didn't increase his vitality, couldn't hold on much longer. After this attack, he only had a bit of HP left. At this time, Gu Fei's second attack, Dual Flame Flash, had arrived. Eternal was already running fast, but he found that he couldn't outrun the attack, and he was in great pain. However, when Gu Fei's attack landed on him, the flames disappeared, and the attack became pure physical damage. Eternal's HP was enough to withstand the Night Stream Sword's physical damage, and he didn't even dare to look back as he ran. However, the burning effect of Dual Flame Flash was still there, and Eternal screamed, "Quickly, dispel!" A mage hurriedly waved his staff, and a blue light rose from Eternal's body, extinguishing the flames left behind by Gu Fei's attack. Eternal looked at his HP and saw that he only had 3 HP left. His legs were about to give out. Eternal was able to survive Gu Fei's attack thanks to his agility curse. Gu Fei only realized that something was wrong when he started using dual flame flash. The agility curse reduced agility, and a player's attack speed wasn't as directly affected by agility as their movement speed. As such, when Gu Fei was using Quick Strike, he noticed that something was wrong, but he didn't pay too much attention to it. On the other hand, the dual flame flash required one to twist their body and take a step. Maintaining this move mainly depended on the displacement of one's feet. As a result, when Gu Fei used this move, he had already sensed that his speed had suddenly decreased by quite a bit. As a result, his dual flame flash failed. Even though he managed to hit Eternal with his second slash, the duration of dual flame flash had already expired. The flames disappeared, and the damage dealt by this slash was negligible to Eternal. Chapter 840. Eternal had already run quite a distance away. Gu Fei wanted to chase after him, but after 2 steps, he realized that his movement speed couldn't keep up with Eternal's. But at least he had another choice. Gu Fei raised his sword and cast a lightning spell. Lightning strikes came down very quickly, and very few people were able to dodge it. However, there was always one of those few people who could dodge it. Furthermore, experts were always very experienced. When he saw Gu Fei raise his hand, he had a premonition and hurriedly dodged to the side. The lightning that descended from the skies struck empty air. Gu Fei had another choice, which was teleportation. But he didn't use it. He never intended to use it, because he was saving it for when he went back to his room. After exchanging a few blows with these people, Gu Fei realized that they were difficult to deal with. Compared to the veterans, they were completely different. They were true experts and had a deep understanding of the game's skills. They were able to accurately judge their opponent's every move. Just like how Gu Fei raised his hand, Forever was able to react quickly to the fact that it was a lightning spell. If it was a veteran soldier, they might be able to react quickly, but they definitely wouldn't be able to make such a quick judgment. Moreover, the veterans' reactions weren't on the same level as Gu Fei's. After all, they were veterans. Perhaps they still had battle experience in their memories, but their reactions and skills required a long period of training to maintain. The veterans had their jobs and their lives. Of course, they couldn't maintain their bodies at peak condition like they did when they were in the army. Most of the veterans chose to use bows and arrows as their main method of attack. This wasn't just out of habit, but also because they had no other choice. Perhaps after entering the game, they discovered that their bodies were rusty from the high tempo of close combat. Although their speed and strength were given to them by the game's data, their reaction speed wasn't something that could be simulated by the game's data. In comparison, the veterans' coordination and tactical awareness were things that normal players couldn't compare to. But with their pitiful equipment, they weren't able to display much of their strength. The current Eagle Party could be said to be an elite in terms of equipment. Although their coordination wasn't as professional as the veterans, it was more suitable for the game and could bring out the full potential of each class. The strength of the Eagle Regiment was stronger than that group of veterans, not weaker. At the end of the day, the players of the Eagle Party were better at playing the game than the veterans, and the veterans were new to the game. They didn't have the opportunity to make up for their shortcomings, and their strengths could only be displayed under limited circumstances. Therefore, Gu Fei didn't dare to be careless against the Eagle Party. This was evident from the fact that he chose to wait patiently on the rooftop instead of fighting the 19 players head-on. Therefore, at this time, Forever ran away. Gu Fei did not choose to use teleportation to chase after him, because he believed that teleportation had a more important use. Although it was a pity that he wasn't able to kill Eternal, Gu Fei didn't lose his cool. The other members of the Eagle Party weren't just watching as Gu Fei and Eternal fought. It was because the two had fought too quickly, only a few seconds had passed. Eternal had just escaped from Gu Fei's attack range, and everyone knew that Gu Fei had been cursed by Eternal's agility, so they immediately took the opportunity to attack. Arrows, spells, the first to arrive were always long-ranged attacks. Gu Fei didn't hesitate. He had saved his teleportation for this moment. He immediately teleported to the rooftop without hesitation. Everyone in. Eternal called out. Gu Fei once again went up to the rooftop, so it was the same as before. Rather than letting him attack from above, Eternal felt that it was better for them to go up to the rooftop. Even if they couldn't hit him, at least they wouldn't be so frustrated. The group of people charged towards the warehouse. Gu Fei threw out an AoE spell, but he didn't care. He just endured the damage and entered the warehouse. During the fight, it wasn't just Gu Fei who was observing them. They were also observing Qianli's strength. They had an idea of how high Gu Fei's damage was. They knew that an AoE spell wouldn't kill them immediately. Gu Fei attacked a few more times, but he couldn't stop them from entering the warehouse. He could only reveal a helpless expression. The members of the Eagle Party started rummaging through the warehouse, trying to find some trash to throw at Gu Fei. However, this was a warehouse owned by Ying Qi Studio. Trash had already been thrown out onto the street, so it was impossible for them to take up space. The few of them searched around and found nothing, so they had no choice but to follow the team upstairs. Of course, the fastest person would be at the front. The player at the front was called 18 Touch. He was a thief. From his name, it sounded like he had the potential to live forever. However, 18 Touch didn't want to touch girls. He wanted to touch other people's pockets. 18 Touch was a master thief. He was ranked 12th on the thief leaderboard. He dreamed of the day when he could directly steal beautiful equipment from others. However, the game company didn't have such a shameful setting. The master thief's steal skill could only be stolen from NPCs. At this time, 18 Touch was at the front of the group of 19. He hated the feeling of powerlessness he felt when Qianli got drunk and stood on top of the wall. If it wasn't for the fact that it wasn't allowed in the game, he would definitely piss on Qianli's head. Unfortunately, he couldn't piss now. At this time, 18 Touch's cheeks were full of saliva. He hoped that Qianli wouldn't stand too far away. His mouth couldn't be compared to an archer or mage. The roof of the rooftop was a flipper. Of course, it was the same as the door to the room. Otherwise, it would be terrible if someone climbed into the warehouse from here. 18 Touch rushed to the rooftop and pushed open the flipper. He crawled out of the stairs and was eager to spit on the edge of the rooftop. However, just as he stepped onto the rooftop, he suddenly felt something tighten around his ankle. He looked down and found that his ankle was wrapped by a rope. 18 Temptations was startled. His back had already been hit by a palm, and an irresistible force pushed him forward. 18 Temptations flew forward, and just as he was about to jump off the rooftop, he suddenly turned into a cloud of smoke. 18 Temptations' figure had disappeared, and the rope had wrapped around his ankles, turning him into a straw man. Do all of you really have a strange skill? Gu Fei frowned. When he looked up, he could already see the location of the 18 Touches. The rooftop wasn't very big, and 18 Touch was just beside it. How did you get up here? 18 Touch was shocked. At this time, the second person had already crawled out of the stairs. When he saw the situation on the rooftop, he turned pale with fright. However, Gu Fei's sword was already burning with flames as it slashed down. At this time, most of his body was still in the stairs. There was no space for him to dodge. Raise his weapon to block? After exchanging a few blows, everyone knew that there was no need to resist against Qianli drunk. His sword was too smooth. Just a few swings and the resistance would be futile. This person's reaction was also very fast. He had no choice but to retreat back into the stairs. At the same time, he reached out and pulled up the flipper. What are you doing? This guy shrunk down and sank his butt. He flipped over a person behind him. The people behind him flipped over one after another. The people on the stairs all flipped backward. They only stopped when they reached the corner of the stairs. Those who flipped over all shouted out, "Qianli drunk is up there." The guy who flipped over a bunch of people with his but said in a deep voice, "Fuck, how did this happen?" Everyone was confused. They didn't understand why Qianli would run up in the blink of an eye after getting drunk. How did he get up there? No one was more familiar with this building than them. There was no place to climb. Shit! The bum guy shouted, 18 Touch is still up there. Hurry up and save him. Someone shouted. What are you panicking for? Forever spoke. Everyone looked at him. Right now, Qianli Drunk is guarding the exit. He'll kill anyone who shows their head. How do we get up there? Forever said. I'll use my shield to protect my head. Clerics will support me. I think it should be fine. A heavy-armored warrior stood out. This person was called Unstoppable. He belonged to the Eagle team and was the only heavy-armored warrior in the team. His equipment was good, so his defense was naturally high. He had tanked countless bosses and was ranked 8th on the warrior leaderboards. Even Unstoppable valued him. This was because people like him were very important when it came to hunting bosses. Unstoppable was the only one in the team. When Forever heard Unstoppable's suggestion, he shook his head. Didn't you see Qianli Drunk's palm skill? He can push people back. When he saw that he couldn't kill you, he pushed you down with his palm. Forever didn't continue speaking. He looked at the bum guy with a meaningful gaze. He was clearly implying that if he pushed him down, the story of everyone flipping on the stairs would repeat itself. The bum guy's face turned red when Forever looked at him, but he didn't know what to say. The bum guy was actually just a kite. He was originally the second highest leveled player in the team, but he had made a fool of himself today. He had lost a lot of face and hated Qianli Drunk even more. I can't even get up there. What about 18 touch? Kite changed the topic. He didn't want everyone to remember his bum skill. Don't worry. 18 touch gives you PK points. Forever said. There's PK points? Isn't that even worse? Everyone looked at Eternal in astonishment, wondering if their captain had been so frightened after the battle with 1,000 Miles Drunk that he had short-circuited. Hee, the key is that Qianli Drunk has a bounty on him. Forever laughed. Everyone immediately understood. However, someone frowned. How can you be so sure? Because this is how he can chase us down. Everything had happened too quickly. Forever didn't have time to tell everyone about his discovery. After hearing the function of the Windchaser emblem, Kite said, but he might have just taken a quest from one of us. What if he didn't take 18 touch? Chapter 841. Forever remained calm and unhurried as he continued to smile. I don't think it's possible. Drunk Qianli received these quests in Moonlit City. I think he was originally working with the 10 Societies Alliance. He was the one who pointed out the location of his wanted targets, and the 10 Societies Alliance would go after them. Kite, have you forgotten what you saw on the top floor of the church in Moonlit City? Kiting and recalling immediately understood. Back then, he had seen quite a few small-scale teams moving about. Judging from the number of players, it didn't seem like they were going to fight against the Eagle team. Sure enough, it seemed like they were going after a single target. That's right. Kite nodded. That's why we retreated. And Qianli was able to catch up to us so quickly because of the random teleportation function of his Windchaser emblem, Forever said. But how did he receive our wanted quest so accurately? Someone was puzzled by this question. I've been looking into this question for a long time. I believe we'll have an answer soon, Forever said. Oh. No one knew that Forever had this kind of operation. At first, Forever didn't have a clue either. It wasn't until he got in touch with 88 Shisan and asked about the situation in detail that Qianli received a wanted quest because he was drunk. That was why he didn't kill 88 Shisan and instead asked someone else to do it. This caught Forever's attention. At that time, he felt that Qianli received a wanted quest because he was drunk. In fact, Gu Fei's wanted license had the ability to directly search a person's name and accept a mission. This was something that everyone in Cloud Peak City knew about, but Forever and the others, who were far away in a foreign land, hadn't heard about it yet. At this time, he wanted to ask around and was still trying to find a way to get close to 1,000 Miles Drunk's people, but he didn't know that this matter could be easily found out by just asking a random player on the streets of Cloud Peak City. That was why he still didn't know the answer. In fact, the most important reason was that In Chi had been forcefully poached by Cloud Teng. The frontline and second-line employees had all resigned, resulting in a serious gap in communication between the upper and lower levels. Otherwise, it would have been easy to obtain this kind of information through the studio. Perhaps the small and temporary workers working in Cloud City would already know about it. Unfortunately, these people's voices couldn't be heard. The person in charge and assistants of Cloud City had all run away. They were busy counting goods for 5 days and were as busy as dogs. Forever briefly explained the situation to everyone, but they didn't mention it until now. It was clear that Gu Fei was in a hurry. What do we do now? Kite asked after listening to Forever's explanation. I think the problem now is Qianli's drunk. P. Green Bowl expressed his opinion. Oh. Forever and the others looked at him. There's only one person in this building. Qianli actually ran up to the roof when he was drunk. If we surround the building, how can he escape? P. Green Bowl suddenly realized something. Oh, he can use a teleportation scroll or something? Sigh, that's useless. Using a teleportation scroll was only possible because the members of the Eagle group were rich people who often used teleportation scrolls. If it was a group of normal players who didn't have the strategic awareness to use teleportation scrolls to run around, they would have happily surrounded the building. Let's listen to 18's situation up there. Forever said as he opened the mercenary channel. 18, please respond if you hear me. Kite called. On the rooftop, Gu Fei looked at the bounty number on 18's body and felt helpless. If they killed him, he would go to jail. When he came out, he wouldn't have any PvP equipment, and who knew when he would be found again. As for 8 West 3, he had already lost 2 levels after killing him once. Gu Fei felt that it was a pity to send him to jail. He opened the mission list and looked at the bounty number. This person's name was 18 Touch. Gu Fei was speechless. He thought that this guy was a fan of Tsubasa's Sakuratsuka, Fireball, and the others. 18 Touch was entangled by Gu Fei's rope as soon as he came up, and was almost pushed down the stairs. Fortunately, he had the skill, Substitute Straw Doll, which allowed him to use a straw doll as a substitute at any time and teleport to any location within the skill's range. Although he was out of trouble, Qianli's Drunken was the strongest opponent in the game so far. 18 Touch didn't dare to be careless and stared at Gu Fei. Previously, Yami Shisan had said that 8,000 Miles Drunk's anti-stealth was indeed very good, but 18 Touch still wanted to give it a try. This was because he was a master thief. Compared to Yami Shisan and the other assassins, his stealth had been improved by his profession, making it harder to be discovered. But looking at the terrain, 18 Touch gave up on this idea. The rooftop wasn't big, and Qianli's Drunken was a mage. 2 area of effect spells could force him to appear. 18 Touch couldn't just float outside the rooftop. What should I do? 18 Touch was thinking about how to deal with Qianli's Drunken. He was extremely distressed when he suddenly heard Qianli's voice. Where's the mailbox? What? 18 Touch was thinking seriously and didn't hear it clearly. I'm talking about the mailbox for sending things. Which way is closer? Gu Fei asked. 18 Touch was stunned. He didn't know how this question was closely related to the current situation. He didn't say anything for a long time. Gu Fei asked again. 18 Touch thought about it and replied, I don't talk to the enemy. Gu Fei was just asking casually. He didn't have the time to send things at this time. But the channel and private chat were full of calls. The guys in Moonlit Night City all wanted him to send scrolls quickly. Gu Fei usually only replied with one word, busy. Which city is this? Gu Fei suddenly asked again. If he knew which city it was, those guys could find a workshop to get a ready-made scroll and come over. In the end, 18 Touch still didn't say anything. Gu Fei had no choice but to run to the edge of the rooftop and look around. He did find a passing player on the street below. Hey, who's that? Gu Fei shouted while trying to attract attention. He raised his hand and summoned a lightning bolt, striking the person in front of him. The player was shocked. He raised his head and saw that there was someone on the rooftop. He thought he was being ambushed and ran away without looking back. Is this method too strong? Gu Fei muttered and moved to the other side. This side was quite far from the street. Lightning definitely couldn't strike him. Gu Fei estimated that his voice wouldn't be able to transmit over, so he turned around and continued to wait patiently. 18 Touch saw that Gu Fei was moving left and right. He took out his dagger a few times and wanted to attack. But every time he took a step, Qianli Drunk seemed to intentionally or unintentionally look back at him. 18 Touch could only hide his dagger again. He tossed and turned, but he couldn't find a good opportunity. Instead, a message flashed in the channel. A kite was calling out. "What?" 18 Touch asked. "How you doing up there?" A kite asked on behalf of the crowd. 18 Touch was speechless. This question was very difficult to answer. Was he good or bad? "Did Qianli Drunk attack you?" A kite asked. "Yes, very strange." 18 Touch said. "That's not strange. He didn't attack you because you have PK points and he has a wanted quest. He wants to kill us and lose levels. He doesn't want to send us to the dungeon." A kite said to 18 Touch. "I see." 18 Touch suddenly understood. "Then if I kill him, he won't dare to fight back. He just doesn't want to send you to the dungeon. It's not that he can't." A kite reminded 18 Touch not to go overboard. "This guy asks for my mailbox and asks where this place is. I didn't tell him." 18 Touch reported to everyone about Qianli Drunk's recent situation. Eternal frowned. "He wants to call for reinforcements. He can use his emblem to teleport here, but his companions can't. He doesn't know what this place is called, so he can't tell his companions how to get here. In that case..." Eternal thought for a moment and came up with a plan. "Those with PK points, go wash them now. Do you still have any teleportation scrolls? You can go to any main city and wash them there. This way, even if Qianli Drunk chases after you, you won't be afraid of being killed by him. At most, you'll just go to jail. On the other hand, if they come and help Qianli Drunk, it will be troublesome if he catches up again. Once we wash all our PK points, they won't be able to find our whereabouts." When everyone heard this, they all felt that it made sense. Eternal gave 18 Touch another message. After receiving it, 18 Touch acted according to his leader's instructions. He immediately took out a scroll and prepared to teleport. Gu Fei was guarding the streets and asking people where they were. In fact, he was paying attention to 18 Touch's actions. Seeing him take out a scroll, he immediately knew that he wanted to leave. Without hesitation, Gu Fei teleported in front of 18 Touch. 18 Touch was shocked and immediately attacked with his dagger. Gu Fei dodged to the side and slashed down with his sword. Although he was going to jail, it was better than letting him roam freely outside. With this slash, 18 Touch immediately knew that he couldn't take the damage. He had already seen Gu Fei's continuous attacks, which were even more coherent than a grandmaster of combats. Without any hesitation, he used his scarecrow skill. Gu Fei's sword flashed, and the scarecrow was cut in two. 18 Touch disappeared. Gu Fei looked behind him to make sure that there was no one behind him. He quickly stuck his head out and saw that 18 Touch had left the scarecrow on the rooftop. He had already teleported outside and was falling down. Gu Fei swung his sword, and the noose flew out and accurately wrapped around 18 Touch's ankle. The end of the noose was a flying hook, and Gu Fei had already hung it on the edge of the rooftop. The length of the noose was calculated by Gu Fei. 18 Touch was falling down. At this height, he estimated that he might still be alive, but he didn't expect his ankle to suddenly tighten. He didn't expect Gu Fei's noose to be able to catch him in this situation. Scarecrow was also a skill with a long cooldown, and it couldn't be used at this time. Once the noose was caught, 18 Touch could no longer fall, and he fell straight towards the rooftop. Chapter 842. What's that sound? In the Eagle Party's warehouse building, there were still some players who hadn't left. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the wall, and the paint on the wall started to fall. They were shocked and asked each other what happened. Could it be that Qianli broke our wall when he got drunk? Someone thought. Impossible. Eternity wasn't a fantasist. He walked over to the place where the sound came from and pressed his ear against it. Fuck your ancestors. When Yong Yuan heard this scolding, he was infuriated and kicked the wall. Who is it? Many people came over to listen. The cursing was still going on. Finally, someone recognized it. It sounds like 18. 18 Touch was hung upside down on the wall and had just pounced on the wall. It was normal for his voice to be a little different. Eternity didn't recognize the cursing. What's going on? A bunch of people were confused. They didn't continue hiding in the room and rushed out to take a look. When he looked up, he saw 18 touches hanging upside down in the middle of the building with one leg tied up. He looked lonely and helpless, but he was quite spirited. He was cursing at the top of his voice as if he was singing a folk song. Gu Fei also poked his head out to take a look. When he saw the members of the Eagle group appear on the street, he waved at them and asked, "Which city is this? Does anyone know?" Of course, they ignored him and shouted at 18 Touch, "Idiot, teleport." 18 Touch was probably in a daze and didn't think about it. His hands weren't tied, so he quickly took out a scroll from his pocket. The moment he opened it, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky and struck him. In this situation, if 18 Touch could still dodge such a fast attack, then he wouldn't have fallen into such a difficult situation. After interrupting 18 Touch's teleportation scroll, Gu Fei smiled at Eternity. "Don't shout so loudly." Eternity clenched his fists so hard that his fingers turned white. He could only use 18 Touch. Even if he died, he would just be in jail. Teleportation scrolls were also considered skill scrolls. Skill scrolls were similar to skills in that they had cooldowns. After being interrupted, they couldn't be used during the cooldown. However, scrolls also had their own advantages. Each scroll had its own cooldown. If a scroll was interrupted during use, he could just change to another one. Of course, 18 had more than one teleportation scroll in her pocket. She immediately took out another one and prepared to use it. She thought to herself that Gu Fei's lightning spell couldn't possibly be ready, and his other spells were so slow that she definitely wouldn't be able to interrupt it in time. Just as she was about to use the scroll, she was suddenly hit on the head, and the scroll immediately went off cooldown. The thing that hit him bounced off and fell to the ground. 18 groping didn't even know what it was. Looking up, Gu Fei casually picked up a few bricks from the rooftop and threw them at him. 18 Touch was in extreme pain. The Eagle party players on the street were also cursing and swearing. They thought that PvP was one thing, but what Gu Fei was doing was inhumane and should be struck by lightning. Gu Fei threw another brick down as he explained helplessly, "I can't help it, my spells are slow. It's faster than throwing things. I promise, I'll use lightning spell once it's off cooldown, alright?" Everyone coughed up blood. 18 Touch hung upside down for a long time. His face was red as he screamed, "If you want to live or die, then give me a quick death." What a hero. Gu Fei praised him and nodded. "Here comes the skill." Saying this, he flashed another lightning spell. After being struck by lightning, 18 Touch still wasn't dead. Gu Fei was also shocked. He's still not dead? As expected of an expert, how can he last this long? The Eagle party players were also coming up with random ideas. One of them told 18 Touch to bend his body and cut the rope himself. 18 Touch was so angry that he cursed in the chat, "Try bending yourself." It was obvious that bending was quite demanding. 18 Touch was a normal person and didn't have the flexibility or the strength of his waist. Eternal was the leader of the Eagle party after all. He thought of a solution. Wouldn't it be fine if he just had someone shoot the rope? Looking left and right, there were only 2 archers in their group, one Kite and Lulan. However, both of them had PvP points and had teleported away to kill. However, they all had a lot of teleportation scrolls on them. Especially since they were fighting on behalf of their boss, one of them had sent quite a few scrolls. Among them, there were scrolls with coordinates. After Eternal sent out the news, one Kite immediately turned around and came out of the building. Seeing the situation, he knocked his bow and shot without a word. 18, stop swaying. One Kite shouted. In many descriptions, shooting a broken rope was considered an extraordinary archery skill. However, in the game, the system had corrected it. Kiting was a player who had been playing bow and arrow for a long time. If he wanted to shoot a fixed target, even a broken rope wouldn't be a problem. Moreover, he wasn't too far away. One Kite's posture was elegant. He pulled his bow into a full moon and had the expression of a savior. On the other hand, Gu Fei's lightning was very good. He electrocuted 18 Touch, but 18 Touch still didn't die. Gu Fei, who usually didn't care about the stats of the game, couldn't help but ask, "How did you add points?" 18 Touch gritted his teeth and didn't answer. However, Gu Fei also noticed one kite's movements and guessed his intentions. He hurriedly grabbed the rope and tried to swing it. 18 Touch resisted. His hands and feet tried to create friction on the wall in search of stability. The rope was pulled taut. No matter how hard Gu Fei tried, he couldn't shake it off. One kite's arrow had already flown out. The sound was rapid. It was a powerful sniping skill. The arrow accurately pierced through the rope, and 18 touches felt his body loosen as if a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Just as he was about to fall to the ground, an electric shock coursed through his entire body. 18 touches turned his head to look, and cursed in unison with all the Eagle Party members on the street, "Fuck!" Qianli's drunkenness was too shameful. Just as 18 Touch was about to fall, he used a wall of electricity to stop him in midair. Curses rang out again, but Gu Fei was indifferent. One kite angrily dodged an arrow, but Gu Fei casually slapped the arrow away. "You're going to die now, right?" Gu Fei asked 18 Touch. "You wish." 18 Touch was really an unkillable cockroach. The Eagle Party members were panicking. There were priests in the formation, but 18 Touch was outside of the skill's range. Once he was in the skill's range, he wouldn't be able to see him. What's the meaning of this? Give Qianli a quick death when he's drunk. Eternal said in a low voice. Okay, the last 2 times. Gu Fei raised his hand and cast another lightning spell. The cockroach didn't die even after being touched 18 times, but after hearing Gu Fei's words, it revealed a frightened expression. It looked at Gu Fei and cried out involuntarily, "How did you know?" Gu Fei laughed. "Appraisal." "Impossible." 18 Touch denied it. He knew that the HP regeneration equipment he was wearing was a high-grade item that couldn't be appraised with the current standard of appraisal. However, Eternal heard their conversation and came to a realization: 100% appraisal. What? The others were confused. His wind-chasing emblem also has a 100% chance of identifying a wanted target. Eternal had seen the functions of the Windchaser coat of arms when he appraised it, but he was more concerned about the random teleportation function. He didn't think anything else was important. 18, what's going on? Eternal asked in the channel. This guy, his attacks are completely calculated with my HP and recovery. His lightning wall has a continuous damage effect, so it can offset my HP regeneration. He just said that he's going to use lightning spell 2 more times. That's just right. 18 Touch said. It's fine, he'll go to jail if he kills you, Eternal consoled. No. If I'm not wrong, his next lightning spell will be left at the end. After that, my HP will be at the bottom. If I fall, I'll probably die. 18 Touch said. Eternal was stunned. If he fell to his death, this kind of natural death wouldn't be considered a PK. Eagle Party would sometimes take advantage of this under certain special circumstances, so they were very clear about the system's judgment in this area. They didn't expect their opponent to do the same thing this time. The conversation between the two in the channel was of course heard by the others, but they were all at a loss. Qianli's lightning spell was already off cooldown, so he wasn't in a hurry to use it. He smiled as he stood on top of the wall. He kited a few more arrows, but none of them had any effect. The others, whether they were archers or not, were all trying to attack from afar, but it was to no avail. The moment the lightning wall disappeared, just as 18 Touch had predicted, a lightning spell accurately fell on his head. 18 Touch looked at his HP and sure enough, he only had a sliver of HP left. He was still half a building away from falling, so the damage was certain. 18 Touches glared hatefully at 1,000 Miles Drunk, then fell straight down. There was a loud bang on the roof, and dust mixed with a white light flew into the air. Gu Fei looked at the quest, and 18 Touch was still there. He knew that this death wasn't counted on him, so naturally he would be punished with a drop in level. Gu Fei turned around and stood facing the street, welcoming the anger of the Eagle group. Who's next? Some of the members of the Eagle Regiment wanted to rush up, but Forever stopped them. He stared at Gu Fei, who was on the roof, and said coldly, "Drunk for 1,000 miles. This matter won't end so easily." "I know," Gu Fei said, "but everyone should hurry up. Playing for too long is bad for your body." "Go fuck yourself." Forever lost his composure and cursed. Loyal players hated this type of lecture the most. You have no choice but to admit it. Look at all of you, you guys have a weak lower body. You need to train your body, Gu Fei said. Under Forever's leadership, the Eagle Group members gave Gu Fei the middle finger and turned around to leave, but they didn't expect that Gu Fei would flip over and jump down from the platform. Everyone thought that he had killed himself, but they didn't think that he would teleport right before he hit the ground, landing with such ease. He wasn't far from the group, and Gu Fei said calmly, "Where are you going? You guys don't have any PK points, and I'm still here. You want to leave?" Forever's heart was beating wildly. Looking at his side, including the kite that had returned at the last moment, there were a total of 7 people. The 6 that hadn't piked were Eternal, Unstoppable, 2 priests, a paladin, and a berserker. Against normal opponents, with these 7 people, Forever wouldn't be afraid, but against Qianli's Drunken, he immediately felt that this team was full of holes. The 2 clerics and the paladin were all support, and Drunken was usually the one being attacked, not the one attacking. As a dark paladin who had been uncursed, according to the game settings, he had completely fallen into darkness. He couldn't receive the support of a cleric, and the paladin's holy heal wasn't a healing skill, but a damaging one. Without any support, fighting against Qianli's Drunken, Eternal immediately thought of the last bit of health he had lost. Thinking about it, there was only 1 kite and the berserker Mingyue left. Mingyue was ranked 27 on the warrior leaderboards, and was the only player in the Eagle group that wasn't in the top 20. Even though this didn't mean that he was the weakest in the Eagle group, Forever didn't have the confidence to rely on him to block Qianli's Drunken. "I'll hold him back, you guys go first." 1 kite didn't disappoint Forever, and stood out bravely. Eternal immediately cast an agility curse at Gu Fei, but Gu Fei immediately dodged to the side when he saw him raise his hand. This caused everyone to be shocked. This guy actually wanted to dodge the curse? Was there something wrong with his head? Eternal was quite nervous, thinking that this crazy guy would be able to dodge the curse, which could only be resisted by resistance. But when he saw that it hit, he heaved a sigh of relief. Gu Fei understood that this skill was similar to a cleric's regeneration and couldn't be dodged by physical attacks. Otherwise, Gu Fei wouldn't have been so afraid of Lolua's regeneration. 1 kite shot 2 arrows. Even though Gu Fei was cursed, it wasn't hard for him to dodge these attacks. He didn't move his feet, and when he saw where the arrows were coming from, he dodged them to the left and right. Eternal, the 2 clerics and the paladin didn't have any speed. Even though Gu Fei was cursed, he was still faster than them, and immediately rushed towards them. Eternal used his ability to take hits, and raised his shield to meet the attack. Gu Fei had a lot of experience, and he knew that it would be difficult to kill a heavy warrior with a series of powerful skills. With the support of 2 clerics and a paladin, he definitely wouldn't be able to kill this person in a short period of time. Thus, he chose to avoid the fight and chase after Eternal. But Eternal knew that he wouldn't be able to get any support, so he didn't fight Gu Fei head-on, and turned to run. Gu Fei knew that his speed wasn't as fast as Eternal, and chasing after Eternal was just an act. He changed his target midway, and swung his sword at the paladin. The paladin was called Knight Zephyr, and he was ranked 9th on the Knight leaderboard. His ranking wasn't low, but in the Eagle party, he was a rather well-behaved person. He didn't have any special skills, but each of his blessing skills had a high level of proficiency. At this time, he had already cast a spirit blessing on everyone, which added magic defense. With the support of 2 clerics, he wasn't afraid of Qianli Drunk, and raised his sword to meet him. Gu Fei swung his sword downwards, easily dodging Knight Zephyr's parry. No one dared to be careless in the face of Qianli Drunk's attack. They cast Holy Heal and other skills, but no one expected that Gu Fei would suddenly change direction. After taking a diagonal step, he swung his sword towards the berserker, Mingyu, who was rushing up to save them. At this moment, 1 kite was extremely anxious. He had relied on the fact that he had PK points, so even if he died, he wouldn't lose a level. He had wanted to protect everyone, but he didn't expect 1,000 Miles Drunk to dodge his attacks so easily. It was as if he didn't exist. At this moment his sword was about to hit Mingyu. 1 kite fired an arrow, but it still didn't help at all. The sword slashed down steadily, and the double flame flash was naturally chanted the moment it struck. As for the double flame flash, Gu Fei didn't use it anymore. After being cursed by the agility curse, he couldn't use this skill that required the soles of his feet. The 2 clerics and 1 paladin rushed to save Mingyu, but the 3 of them had just cast their healing skills on Night Zephyr, so they couldn't use them. How crafty! Only now did everyone realize why Qianli Drunk had faked so many attacks, and they couldn't help but look at him with disdain. At this moment, Gu Fei's lightning palm had already landed on Mingyu's body, sending him flying. At the same time, Gu Fei shot off in the same direction as Mingyu. Everyone saw that after Mingyu was knocked back, she had even left their healing range. They hurriedly closed the distance between them and her. But how could they be faster than Gu Fei? As Gu Fei chased after Mingyu, he cast a lightning spell on Mingyu's head. There was no way for Forever to continue dodging, so he had no choice but to block Gu Fei's path. Yun Zhongmu, who had been cursed by the agility curse, was at a complete disadvantage in a one-on-one fight with Eternal. However, Gu Fei's skills were not at Yun Zhongmu's level. Eternal rained down a barrage of blows from the very beginning. Although the damage was not high, it was enough to make Yun Zhongmu tremble in fear. However, he managed to buy some time. As soon as the 3 of them entered the skill range, their skills went off cooldown, and they immediately went to help Mingyu. Eternal let out a sigh of relief and retreated. His retreat was quite shameless. Gu Fei's dual flame flash was already upon him, but he knew that this skill wouldn't kill him, so he ignored it and ran to the side, allowing the sword to strike his back. Gu Fei couldn't do anything about it. Once his opponent knew that this attack wasn't fatal, he would naturally act shamelessly. At this moment, the doors to the warehouse opened, and the players from Eagle Party streamed out. Eternal had already informed them that Qianli was drunk and had them surround him. As for covering and retreating, they were just putting on an act. Eternal could tell that Qianli was also avoiding direct confrontation with them. Eternal's eyes were sharp, and he saw the root of the problem. It was because of Qianli's series of powerful skills that he couldn't instantly kill the players from Eagle Party. This was a fatal effect. Qianli, let's see where you can run this time. One kite was full of energy. What are you talking about? Gu Fei glanced at Kite in confusion. He pointed at the roof and teleported up. Fuck! Eagle Party yelled. One Kite's face crumbled. What's the point of doing this? Wasting your scrolls? Gu Fei said. Chapter 843. The teleportation scroll was expensive. Although the Eagle Group scrolls were provided by their boss's studio for free, it was also because of this that they couldn't solve their boss's problem even though they were spending their boss's money, which was even more unreasonable. When the Eagle Party thought about how Qianli was able to use such a sinister tactic while drunk, they became even more furious and scolded him even louder. Although they were experts, they couldn't climb up the roof without a ladder or something, so they could only attack him verbally. Actually, Gu Fei didn't have so many thoughts. He didn't know that Forever would summon everyone back. He simply saw that there were too many opponents, so he went up the roof to avoid them. It was Kite who asked him what he meant by that, so he just answered casually. Didn't he see that Gu Fei was still using a question? The two sides fell into a stalemate again. Gu Fei looked around and suddenly said in surprise, "Hey, he dropped equipment." The people on the street heard this and were stunned. Forever looked left and right, but didn't see 18 Touch. He had sent the summon in the mercenary channel. Although 18 Touch had died at the resurrection point, he should have used a scroll to come back as quickly as possible. 18, he dropped equipment? Just as Always On was asking, someone had already seen 18 Touch reappear on the rooftop and was peeking out. Seeing that Qianli was walking towards the place where he dropped equipment, 18 Touch yelled and jumped down from the rooftop without hesitation. At the same time, he threw 2 bricks at Qianli, wanting to knock him back. 18 Touch was confident that he wouldn't be killed instantly at this height. He was determined to get his equipment back even if it cost him his life. In the end, Gu Fei raised his head and pointed his night streamer towards the sky, chanting a wall of electricity. 18 Touch coughed up blood. He didn't think that in just a few minutes, he would repeat the same thing again. 18 Touch, who was twitching on the electric wall, tilted his head and stared blankly at Gu Fei as he bent over to pick up his equipment. He even raised his head to look at Gu Fei and asked with a smile, "Is it your grass substitute?" When Gu Fei had appraised 18 Touches, he already knew that the dagger he was using was called Grassman Substitute, which had a skill called Substitute Grassman. Now that he saw the dagger on the ground, he guessed that it was this one. Heh, it really is. Gu Fei picked it up and saw that it was indeed Scarecrow. Just as he was about to speak to 18 Touch again, 18 Touch disappeared in a flash of white light. Gu Fei was startled. He thought that 18 Touch had died, but when he looked at the quest list, 18 Touch's wanted quest was still unfinished. The Eagle Party members on the street were also shocked when they saw 18 white light disappear. However, they had 18 Touch as a friend, so they soon realized that 18 Touch was not dead, but offline. This made him even more surprised. He thought to himself, could it be that this kid has lost all hope in the game because he suffered such a huge blow? They were only half right. 18 Touch had indeed suffered a huge blow, but it wasn't enough to make him lose hope in the game. He was just too emotional, so the system cut him off from the game. He wasn't the first person that had met with Gu Fei like this, and he probably wouldn't be the last. Gu Fei was such an upright person. They were still wondering if they should return the Scarecrow to 18 Touch, but who would have thought that he would disappear just like that? The Eagle Party members were still cursing when they saw Gu Fei walk to the eaves. The ranged players raised their hands and prepared to attack, but Gu Fei swung his dagger and smashed it into the mage's head. 18 Touch's dagger. The scolding stopped in an instant. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. For a moment, they couldn't figure out what was going on. The mage picked up the dagger from the ground and looked at it. It really is 18 Touch's dagger. They had been friends for a long time and knew each other's equipment. Qianli drunk, what's the meaning of this? One Kite yelled. He felt like there was a huge conspiracy going on. Why do you always like to ask what's the meaning of this? What's your name? Mischievous Blue Cat? Gu Fei said. One Kite didn't get to finish his sentence before the system started to give him warnings. One Kite quickly calmed himself down, but in that moment he seemed to understand why 18 Touch had disappeared. Qianli drunk, do you want us to owe you a favor? Eternal frowned. But I can tell you that if you drop any equipment, we definitely won't return it to you. No matter how he thought about it, this was the only reason he could come up with for picking up his opponent's equipment and returning it. However, this idea was too naive. You still have the nerve to say that? Gu Fei said. Eternal thought, is this guy really thinking like that? But he wasn't embarrassed at all. Instead, he laughed. What's there to be embarrassed about? It's normal for equipment to be picked up by others in the game. Why would I need to return it? Plus, we're opponents. I'm not talking about that. Gu Fei said. I'm saying, do you really have the nerve to say that you'll drop my equipment? Eternal couldn't continue the conversation. The system sounded and he understood 18 Touch. What now? Does anyone want to fight me to the death? Gu Fei asked. Come down. Everyone pointed at him and shouted. Gu Fei ignored them and looked at Maple Blood, who knew earth-shattering slash. Come up. I know that your earth-shattering slash can jump up a building. I've seen it before. Maple Blood obviously wouldn't go up. After exchanging blows with 1,000 Miles Drunk, Yi Shiwen had already determined his strength. If they fought him one-on-one, it would be a waste of time. If there were more than one of them, it would also depend on the composition of the members. Healers were very important. Although 1,000 Miles Drunk couldn't instantly kill them, the damage was still considerable. If they didn't quickly replenish themselves, it was very likely that they would die in the next round. Qianli drunk, you're an expert. We admit that we're not your opponents one-on-one, Eternal said with a serious attitude. 3 or 4 is fine too, Gu Fei said. Eternal immediately thought about how to form a group of 3 or 4 to fight with Qianli drunk, but someone came over and reminded him, do we have to keep fighting with this guy? Eternal turned his head and saw that it was the leader of Group 2, the leader of the original Eagle Group, Yang Ying. This reminded Eternal. Under Qianli drunk's repeated provocations, he had indeed lost his cool. He kept thinking about how to get rid of this guy, But the problem was that in the mission that the boss had given them, getting rid of Qianli drunk didn't seem to be the main point. Just as he was thinking, a white light flashed in the air above the warehouse. 18 Touch had come back online. However, the wall of electricity had already disappeared. Gu Fei didn't care too much and allowed 18 Touch to fall down. As soon as 18 Touch landed, he pounced at Gu Fei and shouted, "Give me back my dagger." Gu Fei dodged to the side and used the momentum to kick 18 Touch up the street. 18 Touch got up and was about to shout again, but the mage had already snatched the dagger and gave it back to him. 18 Touch held the dagger in a daze. When he roared and charged at Qianli drunk, it was just a way of venting his anger. He had the mentality that he didn't want to live without the dagger, but he never thought that he would actually get the dagger back. Now that the dagger was in his hands again, everything felt like a dream. He couldn't believe that this was real. "What's going on?" 18 Touch asked in a daze. "Put away your dagger. Next time it drops, I won't bother to pick it up for you," Gu Fei said. 18 Touch looked at the dagger in his hand and didn't know what to say. Eternal, on the other hand, had completely calmed down. He waved his hand and said, "Let's go." The 19 of them were about to leave the street with Gu Fei following closely from the rooftop. Everyone was depressed. They raised their heads and glared at Gu Fei. "Why are you following us?" "Nonsense, why am I here?" Gu Fei said. Everyone coughed up blood. Eternal looked at Gu Fei's posture. It looked like he was following them and would strike whenever he saw an opportunity. He could only wave his hand and everyone returned to the warehouse building. "Teleport," Eternal said helplessly. "Let's do as we said before. Those who have PK points, go and wash them. Those who don't, do whatever you want." "I don't think we should wash our PK points," Young Eagle suggested. "Once we leave, he'll definitely find some helpers. When he catches up to the people who are washing their PK points, it's very likely that he won't be the only one. If there are others, then there's a chance that they'll be killed and lose levels. I think we should just stay here and grind down our PK points." When Eternal heard this, he felt that it made sense. He immediately nodded. "Then let's all stay here. This place is absolutely safe. Let Qianli do whatever he wants outside. We're all here. What's there for him to do?" Kite mumbled. As a team, they naturally had some entertainment that didn't involve fighting monsters or quests. Plus, they had the backing of the studio and abundant resources. At this moment, they had even brought out mahjong and poker cards. Barbecuing on the rooftop was originally a favorite sport, but when they thought that Qianli would probably go up there again after getting drunk, they could only give up on this entertainment. Gu Fei was outside the building. When he saw that everyone had entered the building, he thought that they would immediately split up. He immediately searched for their coordinates, but he found that they were all at the same location and didn't move. He understood that they were going to stay in the building. Gu Fei couldn't do anything about this. He circled the building twice and even went down to knock on the door. When he asked who was inside, Gu Fei said, "It's me." Immediately, everyone ignored him. Helpless, Gu Fei wandered the streets for a while. The only thing he gained was that he finally found out what kind of main city this was. After sending the news back, it didn't take long for the Han family young master and the others to get their hands on the teleportation scrolls to Grassy City and sent them over. Yun Zhongmu's 10 Guild Alliance's team was too large. They could only send 4 teleportation scrolls at a time, so they couldn't afford to send so many. In the end, they chose 50 of their brothers to come and help. Thinking about Qianli's group of top experts who weren't any weaker than the Eagle group, Yun Zhongmu was full of confidence. Gu Fei told everyone the coordinates. When they arrived at Grassy City, they didn't have time to admire the local customs of the main city in the southeast and rushed over. When they arrived, they saw Gu Fei sitting helplessly on the eaves pretending to be the thinker. "What's the situation?" Han family young master asked. Gu Fei waved his sword and knocked on the door. "Inside." "All of them?" Han family young master asked. "All of them." Gu Fei nodded, then said, "Oh, not all of them. One of them was sent to prison." "It's that 8H Shisan. That bastard, he got off lightly," Yun Zhongmu said hatefully. He wasn't happy that 8H Shisan hadn't been killed to level 10. This guy was too arrogant and condescending. What else? Han family young master asked. The one called 18 Touch died once. Gu Fei said. That's it? Han family young master asked. That's it. It seems like the opponents are really hard to deal with. Yutian Shenming and Unscathed in battle looked at each other. Before, they had been betting on how many people Qianli would have killed by the time they arrived, but they didn't expect the results to be so bad. This eagle group seemed to be a bit hard to deal with. At least they were forced to hide in the house and don't even dare to come out. Brother, you said. What's the point? Gu Fei sighed. It's very useless. They've probably already figured out that you're using the wanted mission to find out their location. Right now they're hiding in the house to grind down their PK points. When the time comes, they'll teleport away. Who knows where they'll go? Han family young master said. But if they continue to harass the 10 Guild Alliance, they'll still get their PK points. When the time comes, won't they still be found? Brother, you said. But Qianli can't be online 24/7, right? Han family young master reminded everyone. These people had seen Qianli's methods of tracking their movements when he was drunk. If they chose to go offline to avoid Qianli, then they really couldn't do anything about it. I can't do anything about it. I can't lend my wanted license to anyone, but the Windchaser emblem can. Gu Fei was helpless. You're so good at wanted missions and have so many privileges. Can't you go in and capture people? Drifting asked. Gu Fei jumped down from the roof and kicked the door twice. He spread his hands and said, Look, I can't open it. Then an arrogant voice came from inside. Qianli, you're so annoying when you're drunk. So noisy. Fuck, you're so arrogant. Cloud Twilight was furious. He went up and kicked the door 18 times. Although the door was shaking and shaking, it obviously couldn't be broken. Of course, there were more curses coming from inside, but they didn't know that the person inside had changed. The curses were all directed at Gu Fei, which made Cloud Twilight feel very embarrassed. I think you should go to your faction and ask. Drifting continued his train of thought. Maybe you have the authority to enter and capture people, but you just don't know how to use it. Will they give me a search warrant? Gu Fei smiled. Who knows? Drifting said. All right, I'll go take a look. Gu Fei was also trying his best. He didn't know where the main city's town hall was, so he randomly chose a direction and walked out of the street. After encountering a player and asking for directions, he really went there. Naturally, there were NPC guards in the town hall that Gu Fei could ask for directions. Gu Fei easily found Flourishing Grass City's guard room. The guard captain of Grassy City was very friendly to Gu Fei. He didn't seem to be unfamiliar with him at all. It was obvious that the World faction was a family. Thus, Gu Fei treated him as if he were a living person and explained the current situation to him. The guard captain understood, but then he told Gu Fei that if he wanted to enter and capture people, he needed a higher authority, and Gu Fei didn't have the authority yet. Gu Fei listened. Although the guard captain's words sounded reasonable, the answer was very NPC style. It was like an NPC giving a hint when he wanted to complete a quest but didn't have the conditions. Gu Fei guessed that when he leveled up his wanted license, he might be able to enter and capture people, but that was obviously not possible right now. He had no choice but to tell the others. They were still outside the Eagle Group's warehouse, and they had nothing to do. There weren't many people walking on the street. Occasionally, there would be people passing by, and they were quite surprised to see such a large group of people suddenly gathering on this street. When everyone received Gu Fei's message, they knew that it was impossible to enter and kill people. There was no point in guarding the place. They had a lot of scrolls and didn't plan on going out. Thus, everyone dispersed in all directions, following young Master Han's instructions to gather more detailed information about the Eagle Group in the old home of the Eagle Group. On the way back, Gu Fei came up with a brilliant idea. When he met the guards on the road, he showed them his wanted license and recruited 2 guards to accompany them to the warehouse of the Eagle Group. Gu Fei wanted to see if the NPC soldiers had the authority to do so. However, when the 2 soldiers arrived outside the building, they stared at Gu Fei with helpless expressions on their faces. Gu Fei saw that he, as the boss, didn't have the authority, and the 2 guards were even more hopeless. Thus, after thinking for a moment, he flew up to the roof and ordered the 2 guards to knock on the door. Gu Fei lowered his head from the roof and vaguely heard the Eagle Group's players shouting, "Qianli, stop messing around when he's drunk." Gu Fei ordered the guards, "Shout." The guards knocked on the door and shouted, "Open the door, we're under orders to arrest criminal number 34215. Gu Fei fell from the roof. This guard was too honest. He had hoped that the guard would say something to make the Eagle Party realize that it wasn't him. The NPC's voice was very distinctive, so experienced players should be able to tell that it wasn't him. If a player called out to them, they might be suspicious, but if an NPC called out to them, it might be able to lure them out. He didn't expect the guard to tell the truth. Gu Fei listened to the door and heard the guy inside laughing. This 1,000 miles drunk is really sinister. He even pretended to be an NPC's voice. He's quite good at pretending. But this guy is still an idiot. He already pretended to be a voice, so why did he say it was a wanted mission? Does he think we're stupid? Ha! 34215. You're a wanted man, are you scared? The people inside laughed. After so long, they realized that Qianli couldn't do anything to them when he was drunk. They felt happy that they had finally made Qianli drunk. Go go. Gu Fei helplessly let the 2 guards go. How could they really say that they were arresting people? They could even say it was a census. NPCs were NPCs after all. They weren't polite at all. Gu Fei looked at the wanted mission list again. He had originally taken 14 players from the Eagle Group, but after completing the mission, there were 13 left. At this time, 3 more missions were marked as failed, because the target's PK points had disappeared. Gu Fei felt that it was a bit unfair to fail the mission in this situation. Chapter 844. The Eagle Party's refusal to fight caused the alliance of experts from Cloud and Night Moon to feel a little awkward. Gu Fei had no choice but to leave after his failed attempt to summon the deceit door. Everyone spread out to find out more about the Eagle Party. The reaction of the players varied. Some were envious, some were jealous, some were in awe, and some were disapproving. But overall, the players of Grassy City recognized the Eagle Party's strength. Even in the entire parallel world, they would be ranked in the top 30, let alone in this Grassy City. They were the strongest group of experts in this city, but the 30 of them had formed a mercenary group and refused to participate in any other organization. Many guilds in Grassy City wanted to rope in the Eagle Party, but the Eagle Party's attitude was very clear: you don't need to rope them in. If you need something, just say it. If you pay, we'll do it. This made things very difficult for the guilds in Grassy City. Whenever there was a conflict with another guild, they would immediately ask for the Eagle Party's help, or check if the Eagle Party had helped their opponent. The Eagle Party used this special method to influence the power structure of Grassy City, and it was said that even the neighboring cities were affected. Whenever there was a guild conflict, the leaders of the guilds would worry about whether or not their opponents had such a powerful party in their midst. From the words of the players from the big guilds in Grassy City, it could be seen that the guilds in the area hated and feared the Eagle Party, which was independent of the other guilds. They only cared about money and not relationships. The influence of the Eagle Corps had on the guilds was that all the big guilds that could stand firm in Grassy City had a wealthy leader. But no matter how rich the players were, they didn't want to be stuck in this bottomless pit. It was said that the 4 big guilds of Grassy City had a private agreement that no matter what happened, they would not ask for the Eagle Party's help. It was unknown how many of them were sincere about this agreement, and how many were just trying to numb their opponents. In the end, the 4 big guilds didn't receive any help from the Eagle Party in the recent city war. It seemed that this agreement was somewhat effective. The experts from both cities were sitting around a table in a tavern in flourishing Grass City, exchanging the information they had gathered. In the end, they all turned to look at the Han family's young master, who had the most wine bottles piled up in front of him. Although he didn't like this person, he had to admit that this person had more ideas than the average person and was also more effective. Yun Zhongmu tried his best to think about this fellow's good points. After all, it was quite painful to rely on someone you hated. Yun Zhongmu tried his best to weaken this feeling. In the end, he concluded that there were 2 things he admired about the Han family young master. First, he drank boldly. The second was Qianli drunk, sword demon's friend. Apart from that, there was nothing else. Yun Zhongmu believed that he had already done his best. The Han family young master listened to these bits and pieces of information and didn't say anything for a while. According to the first player who arrived at the tavern, when he arrived, the Han family young master was already sitting there. Therefore, everyone was actually quite suspicious that the person who asked them to gather information did not do it himself, especially when they saw the pile of empty bottles in front of him. Seeing that the Han family young master didn't say anything, Brother Yu decided to share his opinion, so he said, "From the information we gathered and the mercenary group mission records in Grassy City's mercenary building, the Eagle Party is a bit like a semi-professional mercenary group. They take money to do things, but they don't do everything. They are quite picky about their missions. From the few missions we heard about, all of them had high rewards." Jiannan, who could be considered as a fellow mercenary group, sighed. Of course they have the right to be picky if they are famous. He had also seen the rewards of the Eagle Party's missions, and as a former professional mercenary group, he was quite envious. But from the mercenary group mission records in the mercenary building, they haven't accepted many missions, Brother Yu said. They have a lot of business. Don't they have footprints all over the southeast? Jiannan said. That's possible. Brother Yu nodded. Other than that, there is another detail that I'm not sure if everyone has noticed. The Eagle Party has always done missions in groups of 10. I think this is the first time they sent out a group of 30 people to deal with Old Yun. What does this mean? Yun Zhongmu asked. I think we need more information to summarize. I want to go to the main cities nearby and ask around. Brother Yu was always full of energy when it came to gathering information. Yun Zhongmu nodded and randomly picked 3 players. You and Brother Yu can go together. He also knew that Brother Yu would definitely use the teleportation scroll, so he ordered 3 of them, just enough for 1 scroll. Brother Yu was obviously prepared. He had already asked around for the names of the main cities nearby and obtained the scroll from the workshop. He didn't hesitate at all. What else does Brother Yu want to know? Yun Zhongmu asked. The Eagle Party's true background and style of doing things, Han family young master replied. Is there a need for that? Yun Zhongmu felt that it was more important to know their opponent's strength. Now that they knew, the next step was to find them and kill them. Understanding their background and style of doing things didn't seem to be necessary, right? Right now, we can't even find them. If we don't know anything, how are we going to lure them out? Take the mercenary group as an example. Disguising as an employer and contacting them with a large order is the easiest way to lure them out. However, from Brother Yu's analysis, this method might not work on the Eagle group. Han family's young master said. Yun Zhongmu thought for a bit and nodded. With their style of doing things, it won't be easy to trick them. After saying this, Yun Zhongmu was startled. It turned out that understanding the opponent's style of doing things was useful. Then what do we do next? Yutian Shenming was a bit impatient. Han family young master laughed. The Eagle Party is hiding, and they seem to be quite pleased with themselves. I think they've forgotten that they're just a gun in someone else's hand. Yun Zhongmu, if you want to completely solve this problem, breaking the gun is useless. If it's broken, we can always make another one. We need to target the person using the gun. You're talking about Ing Chi's workshop? Yun Zhongmu suddenly understood. Of course. But they're a workshop. Fighting and killing doesn't affect them much, right? Yun Zhongmu said helplessly. Of course it wouldn't affect them under normal circumstances, but right now their workshop is in a special situation, so it can still be of some use. Han family young master laughed. Just say it, don't beat around the bush, okay? Yun Zhongmu wasn't in a good mood. Ing Chi's workshop is currently going through a huge crisis. Their first-line directors and second-line city managers have all been poached, and there's a lack of manpower. Right now, out of the 19 directors, only 1 is left, and there are only 37 city managers left. With such a large change in personnel, the handover process will definitely be tense. What kind of handover process will there be in the game? Of course, it's the transfer of resources and inventory. Yun Zhongmu understood halfway through, this is a good time to cause some trouble. Han family young master nodded. But how do we know where they'll do the handover? Yun Zhongmu was confused. I've already asked around. Han family young master drank his wine, his smile sinister. In Chi, unscathed in battle, had a pitiful look on his face. Why didn't you say so earlier? Yun Zhongmu suddenly stood up. I've just confirmed it. Han family young master laughed. These places don't have much protection. The only place we've been to is the place where the Eagle Group is hiding. That place is one of the warehouses of a director in the southeast. When we do the handover, we'll have to go through a tough battle. However, we can avoid fighting the Eagle Group. We just need to focus on one target. I've already said that out of the 19 directors, there's only one left. It looks like he'll be the only one left, so he's our main target. But if we kill him to level 10, he'll have the system's protection. He'll be able to do the same. Yun Zhongmu said. Then we'll talk about it after we get to level 10. Han family young master said. Yun Zhongmu thought about it. Having something to do right now is good, and it'll be a powerful counterattack against Chi Studio. Indeed, what's the point of fighting the Eagle Group? Even if they were completely wiped out, Chi's boss could just wave his money and spread his equipment and easily recruit another group of experts. The Eagle Group's scariest part wasn't their strength, but their background. As long as they had this background, even if the Eagle Group was wiped out, a second Eagle Group would immediately rise. However, the Ten Society Alliance wouldn't be able to rise again so quickly. Say it. What do we do? Yun Zhongmu said to Han family young master. Han family young master had already taken out a piece of paper and started writing, saying, this is where their warehouses are in the main cities, they'll definitely go there. The target is called Wu Yi. I think you've already waited for him at the revival point in Moonlit Night City. You should know him. These people shouldn't have much protection, and their strength should be average. Just send a few people to watch over them. Since we don't know which revival point Wu Yi will appear at after he dies, there's no point in waiting at the revival point. We can only kill him every time we see him. Yun Zhongmu took the paper that Han family young master handed over and looked at the densely packed main cities and coordinates of Chi Studio's warehouse. He was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. Where did you get all this from? I'm half a director. How hard would it be to get all this? Han family young master said it casually, but in reality, he didn't think that he would be able to get all this information. After all, he didn't know that Wu Yi was one of the directors of Chi Studio. Young Master Han contacted Nitrite because he wanted to ask the directors of Chi Group, who had already invested in cloud soaring, about the relationship between the Eagle Group and Chi Group. In the end, these directors had heard of the Eagle Group, but they didn't know much about its relationship with Chi Group. The Eagle Group was just a team of private soldiers that Matchless Miracle kept to accompany him in the game. It could be said that it had little to do with the business of the studio, so it had nothing to do with the directors. In the end, they didn't know much about Chi Studio, but they knew that they were taking over. Nitrite also sighed to Han family young master. Resources were the foundation of the studio, and it seemed like Chi Studio wouldn't fall because of this change in personnel. Yun Teng would be exposed sooner or later, and Chi Studio would definitely treat Yun Teng as their mortal enemy. Nitrite couldn't help but worry. Han family young master asked Nitrite for this information and expressed that he wanted to cause trouble for Chi Studio. Although Nitrite knew that killing people wouldn't affect the studio much, it was better to have more trouble. Who cares what kind of trouble it was, as long as it was Chi Studio, he would welcome it. Therefore, he didn't hesitate to provide the information to Han family young master. The locations of these warehouses weren't really confidential. After all, the house was designed in the game, and robbery was impossible. Nitrite asked the directors about this, and they didn't suspect anything. They all told him about the warehouses they had. Just like that, the information reached the hands of the Han family's young master. Now, it finally had a use. Attacking Chi Studio? That was neglecting the essentials. Only by crushing Chi Studio could everyone rest easy. Although this wasn't possible, the most players could do was fight and kill. After Yun Zhongmu received the coordinates, he immediately took action. He assigned people, prepared scrolls, and teleported. If there were 4 people in each warehouse, the 50 people that Yun Jong-mu brought weren't enough. Unscathed in battle was a master of acting cool, and it was enough for him to go alone. Yu Tianxinming also wanted to act cool, but when he saw that he needed to find the coordinates, he didn't dare to say anything. Han family young master directly told them 5 Knights' current location. Actually, they would definitely be able to kill him if they chased after this point. The other points were just a matter of making preparations beforehand. It had to be said that 5 Knights' current situation was quite pitiful. Normally, a mole would betray a group of people, but now, he was being betrayed by a group of mole. Of course, other than Wu Yi, the other directors didn't know what was going to happen. The boss simply asked them about 5 Knights' current location. You'll be in charge of the Eagle team. Han family young master said to Gu Fei. Grassy City's warehouse was also one of the places that they would go, even though it wasn't their turn yet. What's the point of killing that guy? Gu Fei had a face of boredom and couldn't accept it. He was here to fight against experts. Who was 5 Knights? 1 finger was enough. There wasn't any challenge at all. You can kill everyone in the Eagle team. No one will mind. Han family young master said. Gu Fei left. Yu Tianxinming, Jianan, drifting away, and Yun Jong-mu all chose their own places to go. After everyone left, Shui Xin and Lu Ku came over. Your plan isn't bad, but what about forever? First, we'll take out his backer, then we'll slowly take care of him. Han family young master said. You're already sure it's him? Shui Xin asked. Who cares? Just his name alone is worth killing. Han family young master said. Shameless. Shui Xin looked at him in disdain. He and Lu Ku also flew away. The 2 of them also took a set of coordinates and went on a trip. Everyone flew away. This time, they did not realize that they had all gone to work, and young Master Han was once again left leisurely in the tavern. Main city, Bowser. Just from the name, one could tell that it wasn't the same style as Cloud Moon White Stone. This was another faraway main city. To the players in Cloud Moon Night, it was almost unheard of. At this moment, Yun Jong-mu was standing on the land of this main city. Looking at the buildings, the streets, and the players, it was no different from any other main city. Yun Jong-mu wasn't in the mood to admire these things. He wasn't here for a vacation. 5 Knights was about to come to this main city for an inventory. As the main character of this incident, Yun Jong-mu felt that he had the responsibility and obligation to stab 5 Knights in the back. He brought 3 of his friends and the 4 of them followed the coordinates to the main city. The warehouse was on a very wide street with a lot of people. The protection of private residences in the game was very good, so no matter how important it was, there was no need to hide it in a remote place. Yun Jong-mu and the others went to the street and followed the house number. Finally, they found this warehouse. It was a small 2-story building. They're so fucking rich. Yun Jong-mu cursed. The houses in the game were sold according to the area. This kind of big house was naturally not cheap. Yun Jong-mu and the 10 Guild Alliance couldn't afford to build such a high-class house, but their studio bought such a big house to use as a warehouse. I don't know if they're here yet, a player beside Yun Jong-mu said. Yun Jong-mu looked left and right, then went up and knocked on the door. He just wanted to make sure that there was someone inside. Let's wait and see. After knocking a few times, there was no reply. Yun Jong-mu said in a low voice. Yun Jong-mu felt that his luck was pretty good this time. The 4 of them waited for less than 5 minutes, and the godly archer in the team had already pointed at the street. The 2 walked side by side, getting closer and closer. Yun Jong-mu could already see clearly that one of them was the legendary high-level player that they had guarded at the archer shooting range in Moonlit City. It's the archer. Don't let him get away, Yun Jong-mu said as he went into stealth. What about the guy next to him? Someone asked. Take care of the target first. We'll see what happens with the other one. If he dares to get in our way, then we'll take care of him as well. Yun Jong-mu could roughly guess what kind of people 5 Knights had come with. He didn't know if the Han family young master had made arrangements for these people. As long as they knew what was good for them, he wouldn't make things difficult for them. If they caused trouble, then he wouldn't be polite either. Yun Jong-mu, who was in stealth, was already moving towards 5 knights. Apart from the archer, there was also a warrior and a cleric. They were dealing with a mere businessman from the studio, so they didn't ask for any cooperation. Yun Jong-mu figured that he alone would be enough. Chapter 845. 5 Knights was walking side by side with his former director. Their relationship wasn't exactly good, but it wasn't exactly bad either. If it was in the past, the two of them definitely wouldn't be so silent when they walked together. In-Chi Studio could be considered a big company, and it was led by the 19 directors. Standing together with any one of them, there would be endless business topics to talk about. However, right now, the two of them had a tacit understanding that they didn't say anything, especially about the departure of In-Chi Studio. 5 Knights couldn't help but think of the director from before. He was surprised that 5 Knights was still guarding In-Chi, and he tried his best to tell him about the mistake of his choice. This made 5 Knights extremely depressed. Did he make the wrong choice? He clearly didn't have a choice. We're almost there, it's just up ahead. Just as 5 Knights was thinking about his helplessness, his old colleague pointed ahead and said to him. 5 Knights nodded and forced a smile. Are there a lot of things? Quite a lot. The other person replied. Then hurry up. 5 Knights said. But. The other person nodded and quickly walked to the front. He opened the door and said, if there aren't any problems, I'll transfer the authority to you. After saying that, the door opened. The person moved to the side and said, come in. As he said that, he turned around and looked, but 5 Knights was nowhere to be seen. The person's face was blank. He looked left and right on the street, but 5 Knights was nowhere to be seen. He hurriedly sent a message to 5 Knights, where are you? He was killed. Wu Yi replied, feeling extremely depressed. He had been drinking cold water for the past few days. He was just casually walking on the street, and he didn't offend anyone. How did he get killed? 5 Knights didn't even know who killed him. He only felt a pain in his waist. The opponent's attack power was undoubtedly very high, and he was killed in 2 hits. What the hell? 5 Knights cursed the players who killed him at the resurrection point. Then, he sent a message to his old colleague. Hold on, I'm coming. He flipped a scroll, teleported, and walked towards the street while thinking about this matter. Yun Jong-mu's 3 brothers were all stunned. As soon as Yun Jong-mu appeared, they were prepared to rush over to help, but they didn't expect that as soon as Yun Jong-mu appeared, his opponent would turn into a streak of white light and disappear. This person was killed without any suspense at all. What was even funnier was that his companion didn't know anything. He was already dead, but he was still looking around. These guys were really flowers that grew up in a greenhouse. They didn't have any PK awareness at all. Just as the 3 of them were looking at each other with disdain, Cloud Twilight also turned around. He shook his head and said, boring. Quite a noob. There's no sense of accomplishment in killing an opponent like this. What's next? The 3 asked. He should be coming back. Let's wait a bit longer, Cloud Twilight said. He waited for his stealth to come off cooldown before entering stealth again. The 4 of them continued to stand guard on the street. At the same time, they reminded the others that they had succeeded and told them to stay alert. The target might change to their place. As it turned out, Wu Ye's combat awareness was indeed quite poor. Even though he was killed once, he still thought it was some kind of misunderstanding. He was well aware that he was very weak and vulnerable. It would be very dangerous for him to be hit by a flying spell or arrow during a PK. But when he thought about it, the street was quite peaceful. When he asked his old colleague, he didn't even know how he died. Of course, he didn't know what happened on the street either. He only said that everything was normal when he found out. We still felt a bit uneasy. But in the end, it was because he didn't really care about his level, so he didn't think too much about it. Among the 19 directors of Mage Studio, 4 of them were quite interested in the game. They used the studio's equipment for personal gain. Their levels weren't low either. 3 of them had no interest in the game at all. They hadn't even reached level 10 yet. Most of the rest were more ambiguous. When they had nothing better to do, they would use the game as a form of entertainment. Even though they were just playing for fun, their levels were still earned through hard work. It was just that Wu Ye's mind was full of worries. He didn't have the time to worry about things like levels anymore. Cloud Twilight and the others didn't wait for long. Wu Yi used a scroll to teleport to Bar's city and then turned around to this street. He was an archer, so his speed wasn't slow. He appeared at the end of the street in about 10 minutes. He was in a hurry. This time, he didn't walk slowly. Instead, he ran. The game was different from the real world. Players in the game had amazing endurance. As long as they didn't have to match the team's speed, they would run 80% of the time. The more experienced a player was, the more they would run. Therefore, other than the trading street, the other streets in the game were filled with players running around. Wu Yi ran all the way here, but Cloud Twilight was also an expert. He calculated Wu Ye's path and quietly stood to the side, waiting for Wu Yi to pass by him. Wu Yi didn't disappoint. He ran in a straight line. The moment he passed by Cloud Twilight fiercely stabbed him. Why else would Wu Ye's PvP awareness be so bad? He was stabbed, yet he still foolishly ran forward. However, it was precisely this stupidly running that allowed 5 knights to luckily avoid Cloud Morning's second blade that was originally chasing after him. After running a few steps, Wu Yi turned around. Cloud Twilight had already rushed in front of him. The two of them just happened to meet each other's eyes. Cloud Twilight was wearing assassin equipment and had his face covered. Wu Yi actually didn't recognize him. He only shouted, "Who are you?" Cloud Twilight had long stabbed a knife into his heart. He had always looked down on those fellas who liked to make long-winded speeches before delivering the fatal blow. Of course, in the real world, the person who dealt a fatal blow would die. There wouldn't be a chance to say anything, so it was understandable if he wanted to say it. But in the game, Cloud Twilight felt that he was too stupid. Cloud Twilight, who was determined not to be an idiot, didn't speak to Wu Yi at all. Kill him? Wu Yi had shown his face, but he had still been killed. Calling it a misunderstanding was a bit unreasonable. Wu Yi felt that this was clearly an assassination against him. Who would want to kill him now? The answer was obvious. Wasn't it Qianli's group of people? Wu Ye's heart was filled with anger. He hated the fact that he could do something in the game's economic field, but in the PvP field, he wasn't even worth a fart. 5 knights had entered the game since the first day of the open beta in the parallel world. He worked diligently and took his time to level up. After being slashed by 1,000 miles drunk during the negotiation of the efficient leveling method, and after being killed by the 10 Guild Alliance in Moonlit Night City, he was only at level 35. After being killed twice by Cloud Twilight, he had already fallen to level 33. With his strength, Cloud Twilight's group of 4 could only say that he didn't want to waste a seat with a teleportation scroll. Anyone from the 10 Guild Alliance could take him down. The angry Wu Yi still focused on his career. He first sent a message to his old colleague, "I can't come over for a while. Someone wants to kill me." "What happened?" "Sigh, it's a long story," Wu Yi said. "Did you offend someone from Cloud City?" Wu Yi had already talked about it in the meeting. Although the directors were absent-minded, they at least knew about it. "Probably. Then what do we do now?" the old colleague asked. "Make a scroll in the storeroom and then mail it to me," Wu Yi said. But the old colleague nodded his head. He took the scroll and wrote down the coordinates. He wanted to mail it out, but he saw Cloud Twilight and his group of 4 men blocking the door. They had sinister expressions on their faces. "What are you doing?" Many players would be scared by their appearance, but for a studio member who didn't really care about his level, he didn't care about the danger. He just smiled and said, "What do you want?" "Are you Ingqi's people?" Cloud Twilight asked. The other party was startled. Should he say yes or no? Cloud Twilight saw that he was hesitating. He guessed that this guy was one of the people who had left. He patted him and said, "We are attacking Ingqi. It has nothing to do with you. Don't get involved." The other party smiled. "I'm doing my job." "Your job can wait. It's not like Wu Yi will die," Cloud Twilight said. However, the other party shook his head. Cloud Twilight also knew that the other party definitely didn't care about levels. After appraising the other party, he discovered that this person was level 36. To Cloud Twilight, this person was trash. So, he immediately adjusted his strategy and asked, "Which workshop are you in right now?" Cloud Twilight listened to Han Family Young Master's words carefully. Han Family Young Master said that they were poaching people. This meant that Ing Chi's people had just moved to another studio. The other party was still hesitating. Cloud Twilight didn't need to hear his answer and said, "I don't think you want to bring trouble to your new boss, right?" The other party was startled. He didn't think that the other party would use such a threatening method. All the 18 directors had turned to Yun Ting, but the scale of Yun Ting Studio could not be compared with Ing Chi after all. It was still unknown how these people would be digested. It was also unknown whether they could still sit in the position of director with great power and wealth. Not to mention the problem of competing with the old employees of Cloud Ting, the 18 of them were standing on a new starting line together. They still needed to grasp their own path in the future. However, if they brought trouble to the studio before they even started, then their starting line would be pushed back. Cloud Twilight was afraid that the other party would suspect that his threat was just empty words. He didn't hide his identity. "We are from the 10 Guild Alliance. I think you should know how powerful we are." The 10 Guild Alliance had messed up Ing Chi's business in Moonlit Night City. They weren't afraid of fighting and killing, but they were afraid of this kind of conflict. When the other party heard this, he knew that he couldn't offend this scourge for his new boss, so he made a prompt decision. "If that's the case, can I go offline?" "Sure, we'll send you over," Cloud Twilight said. The other party smiled and expressed his thanks. Cloud Twilight left 2 of his brothers and another person to send the other party to the revival point and go offline. After threatening them, he had to give them some enticement. Cloud Twilight had a lot of tricks up his sleeves. He asked on the way, "Brother, which studio are you from? Since you've given me face today, I'll ask my brothers to support your business in the future." The other party was very happy to hear this. Establishing a stable business relationship with a big guild like the 10 Guild Alliance was something that the studio loved. He quickly replied, "Thank you. I'm living like summer from Yun Ting Studio. I haven't decided on my specific job yet. When I officially start working, I'll definitely make things convenient for you." "That's great." Cloud Twilight laughed. "Looking at your demeanor, you must be the president of the 10 Guild Alliance, right?" Life like Summer wasn't the director of Moonlit Night City, so he only cared about the power situation in the main city under his control. He had heard of the 10 Societies Alliance, but he hadn't paid attention to who the guild leader was. He had only heard of Yun Zhongmu's name on the spot, so he immediately praised him. Cloud Twilight smiled. "That's me." The 2 of them flattered each other as if they were a family. After a while, he arrived at the revival point. Living Like Summer sent 5 Nights a message, saying that he had some urgent matters to attend to and needed to log off to take care of them. He would meet up again after taking stock. After saying that, he didn't give 5 Nights a chance to reply and immediately logged off. Before he left, he even waved at Cloud Twilight. 5 Nights received Living Like Summer's message and saw that Living Like Summer had gone offline. He didn't know what happened. But no matter what, he couldn't continue with the inventory here. 5 Nights could only contact another director who was online. This director was one of the 4 people who loved games. Currently, his new boss hadn't arranged any work for him, and his old boss was waiting for the inventory. It was rare for him to be free. He was the director of the studio, but he was also one of the elite members of the guild in the main city. At this time, he was out leveling with the team and was happily teasing the beautiful cleric in the team. When he received the message from 5 Nights asking him to go to the studio, he was very disappointed. He replied in a very displeased manner, "Isn't it my turn to come tomorrow?" They had all arranged their schedules beforehand. 5 Nights was also helpless. Living Like Summer suddenly has something to do and can't sit around. "You can go first." This guy was also helpless and could only agree, "Then you can come over." After saying this, he waved his arm and shouted, "Everyone, train first. I have something to do. I have to go back and hand over a few million gold coins worth of resources." Fuck, keep bragging. Everyone in the team was his buddies in the game. They didn't know that he was the director of the studio. Things worth a few million gold coins would naturally be treated as a super big shot. Everyone laughed. This guy didn't explain and just laughed as he left. He quite liked this feeling. He even dreamed that one day he would take out a large number of things from his studio and open their eyes. It would definitely be shocking. However, he could only think about it. He felt that it was better to keep a clear line between public and private affairs. This guy came back pretty quickly. He kept urging 5 nights along the way. He was in a hurry to go back and level up with the beautiful girl. 5 nights had already prepared a scroll for this main city. He flew over and searched according to the coordinates. The main city of Chuck was the same as the main city of Balls in Living Like Summer's Side. The name didn't have any intuitive meaning. The ones who came to the main city of Chuck were Yutian Shinming and Unscathed in Battle. Unscathed in Battle wanted to move alone, but it was embarrassing that Yutian Shinming didn't know the way. Instead of following outsiders and embarrassing himself, it was better to follow his own people and be looked down upon. Brother, you went to another city to collect information? Han family young master sat there like a boss. Chenli got drunk and faced the strongest eagle group. Sword Demon was in jail. Jian Nan and the others were considered to be on the same side. And drifting was a bitch? Therefore, Yutian Shinming finally chose to go with Unscathed in Battle. The two of them bickered all the way to Chuck's main city, outside of Ingqi's warehouse, which was also a large mansion. The two of them waited while looking at each other with disdain. Then, they received the last message from Cloud Twilight, saying that the inventory had been destroyed and that 5 nights should be moving. Keep your eyes open. Unscathed in Battle said to Yutian Shinming. Alright. You can go die already. Unscathed in Battle finished leading the way. In Yutian Shinming's eyes, he immediately lost his value. He wanted nothing more than to be washed away like a piece of paper to wipe his ass. Fuck, didn't we agree that we would each do it once? Unscathed in Battle said. But the first time was me. Yutian Shinming said. I know. Do you think I'll go back on my word? Unscathed in Battle said. The two of them used rock, paper, scissors to fight for the right to kill first. Unscathed in Battle lost. You want to go back on your word? Do you have a chance? Yutian Shinming sneered. His eyes were good, his speed was fast, and his attack range was long. Unscathed in Battle really didn't have a chance to go back on his word. However, he didn't think that Unscathed in Battle would sneak attack from the side. He put Yutian Shinming down and stepped on him. Now you have a chance, right? Fuck you. Yutian Shinming would always inadvertently get ambushed by Unscathed in Battle at close range. The two of them were both experts. Sometimes, Yutian Shinming was alert and could dodge, but sometimes he would be hit. At this time, he was immersed in the pleasure of looking down on Unscathed in Battle. He was careless. The two of them messing around would naturally attract the attention of others. Unscathed in Battle was the winner, so he didn't mind. Yutian Shinming was furious and prepared to risk his life. His hands could still move, so he drew his bow and was about to shoot a burst arrow at Unscathed in Battle. Unscathed in Battle immediately loosened his foot. With a serious face, he said, "Stop messing around. Let's get down to business." Fuck you. Yutian Shinming still shot an arrow at Unscathed in Battle. Of course, he also knew that this arrow wouldn't be able to instantly kill Unscathed in Battle. Watch carefully. Unscathed in Battle acted like a big brother who didn't mind a little brother. Yutian Shinming ignored him. After looking left and right, he suddenly said, "Speaking of which, I actually don't know that guy called 5 Nights." Really? I don't know him either. Unscathed in Battle said. Yutian Shinming's eyes widened. You don't even know him and you're saying that you can take care of him by yourself? I forgot. If you don't know him, then why are you following me? I thought you knew him. Yutian Shinming scolded. I don't know an egg. Unscathed in Battle also scolded. Huh, could this be an egg? The two of them were crouching on the opposite side of Ingqi's workshop. At this time, they saw an archer arrive at Ingqi's warehouse. After looking left and right, he sent a message. The two of them looked at each other. Yutian Shinming knocked an arrow and pulled back the bowstring. 5 Nights. The archer raised his head. Yutian Shinming released the bowstring. Headshot. Next time it's my turn. Unscathed in Battle said. Chapter 846. Yutian Shenming felt that he was too cool. He was leisurely squatting in the corner and basking in the sun. When he saw his target appear, he lazily raised the bow in his hand. With a light shout, a swift arrow shot out and casually took his opponent's life. How could he be so charming? Yutian Shenming hated that his elegant demeanor couldn't be recorded and uploaded to the internet. Otherwise, he would definitely be mesmerized by many female gamers. Yutian Shenming was reminiscing about how cool he was. Unscathed in Battle didn't clearly hear what he said, so he didn't respond. However, Unscathed in Battle was afraid that Yutian Shenming would snatch it from him. This guy could attack from 60 meters away. 5 Knights was weaker than an egg and would explode with one arrow. If he really did snatch it, then he wouldn't have any way out. Thus, when he saw that Yutian Shenming didn't say anything, he was very dissatisfied. He pulled Yutian Shenming's ear and roared. "Got it!" Yutian Shenming was interrupted and rubbed his ear in dissatisfaction. When the two came back to their senses, they began to seriously think about the problem. "Do you think he'll come back?" Yutian Shenming said. "If he's an idiot?" Unscathed in Battle felt that his opponent was an idiot, but his rationality told him that there were very few idiots in this world. "That's too bad. You probably won't be able to kill him." Yutian Shenming gloated. "But didn't Yun Zhongmu and the others kill him twice?" Unscathed in Battle thought. Maybe that 5 Knights really was an idiot? Since there's nothing else to do, let's just wait. Yutian Shenming said. The two brazenly squatted in front of the warehouse and looked around at the passers-by until another player appeared in front of Inky's warehouse. This person clearly stopped and was about to open the door. Yutian Shenming and Unscathed in Battle were startled because this person clearly wasn't 5 Knights. Even his class was different. However, he did not have the time to think about it. Yutian Shenming shouted, 5 Knights, and Unscathed in Battle charged forward. This person was, of course, the original supervisor of this city district. He had come to hand over the inventory with 5 Knights. He returned from the leveling area much slower than 5 Knights, who used a teleportation scroll to return from the outer city. Wu Ye's death this time, coupled with his previous encounters, naturally made him realize that this was an all-out hunt for him. These people were even arranged according to the route he wanted to take. From this, 5 Knights was certain that this assassination attempt wasn't just a private matter involving Qianli's drunk players. If it was just a player, how could they know that he was taking inventory? How did they know that Ingqi's warehouses were all over the country? It was obvious that a rival studio was involved in the assassination, and the 18th director, who had already resigned, had unceremoniously stood on the side of the new owner and revealed the location of the warehouse. 5 Knights was a sinister person. When he guessed, he would naturally think of a sinister method. He felt that the 18th director was working together to betray him and create obstacles for the inventory. Could it be that they wanted to use this method to obstruct the inventory and then swallow the goods? 5 Knights' dark personality could be seen from this. The more he thought about it, the more ridiculous it became. After thinking about this, of course, 5 Knights wouldn't take the initiative to come to him. Thus, he contacted Xing Ruxia and asked the director to make a scroll and then send it to him. Going directly to the warehouse was absolutely safe. 5 Knights was very sure of this. The authority of the warehouse was absolutely not allowed to be opened to outsiders. This was clearly stated in the contract. 5 Knights believed that the other party wouldn't have the guts to violate it. Moreover, the other party couldn't do it himself. That would be equivalent to intentionally disrupting the inventory. This was unacceptable. After all, between them, they weren't like the players in the game who didn't care about anything. This was their real life. The director was in a hurry to play the game and was very unwilling to accept such a troublesome request from 5 Knights. But after hearing 5 Knights' reason, he immediately replied, "Come at me. This is my territory. Let's see who dares to touch you." This brother loved the game. He had good levels and good equipment. Mingling in the big guilds of Chuck City, he could be considered a small force. But when 5 Knights heard this, he was even more unwilling. This guy clearly wanted him to be killed. Thus, he insisted on using a scroll to teleport. It was safe and fast. You're so troublesome. 5 knights wouldn't be able to do the inventory. This director actually wanted to settle this matter as soon as possible so that he could cut all ties with Ying-Chi. Thus, he came over to make the coordinates. But just as he was about to open the door, Yutian Shunming shouted and unscathed in battle rushed over. The director was stunned when he heard 5 knights shout. Then, he heard the hurried and heavy footsteps behind him. This brother was considered an expert. He immediately judged that this was a warrior's charge. Without turning his head, he immediately dodged to the side. Yo, you have some skills. Unscathed in battle saw the other party's reaction and was a little surprised. They were professional traders in gaming studios. They would be lucky if they had a level of 20 or 30. Who would have thought that the person in front of them would have such a good reaction? It was obvious that he had been through the baptism of battle. With this thought in mind, he looked at his opponent and realized that his opponent's equipment was not bad. Yutian Shunming used Identify and realized that his level was not low either. The director was a thief. After dodging charge, he turned to look at his opponent. He had seen countless pieces of equipment in gaming studios. Without even using Identify, he could tell that unscathed in battle's equipment was top-notch. He knew that his opponent was strong. Moreover, he was an assassin in a melee fight with a warrior. In addition, there was a sharpshooter crouching in the corner with gorgeous equipment. This director had a gaming habit. He immediately sent a message for help while asking in a deep voice, "Who are you? You're here with 5 knights to inventory?" Unscathed in battle was straightforward. The director nodded. "With us here, you won't be able to enter this door. Wash up and go to sleep." Unscathed in battle said. "Not necessarily, right?" The director laughed. With his identity in the game, he could easily summon 100 people in this city. Although these two looked very skilled, they couldn't possibly be Qianli drunk, right? This director was a gaming fan. Of course, he would pay attention to a top expert like Qianli drunk. Just as the director finished speaking with a smile, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. How did these two people know about the inventory? Either Ying-Chi or Yun-Ting would know about this. Of course, their new boss also knew that they had some work to do in the next few days. Of course, Ying-Chi wouldn't find someone to kill 5 knights. Therefore, the origin of these two people who knew about inventory was obvious. The director's thoughts were very quick. He thought that killing 5 knights was an order from his new boss. His guess wasn't wrong. Although this matter wasn't planned by Nitrite Radical, when he heard that the Han family young master wanted to cause trouble during inventory, he didn't stop them at all. Instead, he actively provided them with the necessary information. It was obvious that he was happy to see Ying-Chi's inventory being disrupted. Of course, he wasn't as sinister as 5 knights thought he was. He just wanted to disrupt the inventory and paralyze Ying-Chi for as long as possible. Although talents were important, production materials were the foundation. Restricting inventory meant restricting Ying-Chi's flow of resources. This was a truly terrifying blow. Actually, just killing Nitrite Radical wasn't enough. He really hoped that these experts would guard Ying-Chi's warehouse to the death. Ying-Chi would be killed the moment they came and they wouldn't be able to get any goods. If this continued for a period of time, Ying-Chi would really be done for. Of course, Nitrite Radical could only look forward to it or hint at it. He definitely couldn't take the initiative to plan such a thing. Poaching people wasn't a big deal. However, using such a method to make a fuss in the game was something that the industry despised. Only studios that wanted to be ostracized would use such a method. But now, Ying-Chi had offended someone they shouldn't have. There were really players who used such a method to attack them. Nitrite Radical was very happy. He believed that if other studios knew about this, they would be just as happy as he was. Han family young master definitely couldn't be offended, Nitrite Radical thought. He now suspected that this guy had planned to use such a method to completely destroy Ying-Chi. Perhaps he didn't need to hint at it at all. So there's a way for players to destroy studios through battle. Nitrite Radical muttered to himself after pondering over the pros and cons of this matter. The director, whose mind was racing, immediately hesitated when he deduced that this was definitely the intention of the new boss. He was in this industry, so of course he knew that such a method was very improper. However, he also happened to know that Five Nights had indeed offended a group of players in the game on behalf of Ing-Chi. Perhaps this was really the behavior of players, so the new boss took advantage of the situation and casually gave him some information? This director was really a smart person. After analyzing the pros and cons, he actually completely dug out the truth. However, he didn't dare to confirm it himself. After thinking about it, he still sent a vague message to Nitrite Radical, wanting to sound him out. He racked his brains and tried to be tactful, but he still sent a message that expressed his intention. Nitrite Radical's reply was only 4 words: "Do as you see fit." The director immediately understood. Do as you see fit. What else could he do? Of course, he had to consider from the perspective of the new boss. Then wasn't it easy to do? The director immediately sent a message to Five Nights. First, he sent a bunch of blocked profanities. At the end he said, "Fuck. As expected, there's an ambush. They even want to kill me. I can't get through, so what should I do? Why don't we do it another time?" Of course, this guy made up an excuse, but Five Nights saw it and shouted, "As expected." He was already wholeheartedly suspecting that the other party had colluded to steal Ing-Chi's goods. Otherwise, how would they digest so many people at once? If they suddenly had such a large batch of goods, of course, there wouldn't be a problem. Vicious. Really vicious. Five Nights thought of the conspiracy in his own mind and sighed at how vicious it was. He believed that the other places would definitely have similar arrangements. He definitely wouldn't be able to get close, and the other party would also find an excuse not to provide teleportation scrolls. Previously, he thought that Xingru Xia really had something up his sleeves. Now that he looked at it, it was a conspiracy. It was all a conspiracy. It was so difficult for these 18 people to stay online and put on a show. Why didn't you just hide offline and solve the problem? At this moment, Five Nights didn't contact the next person. He directly went offline. He wanted to contact the offline boss, Unparalleled Wonder, to see how this matter could be dealt with. The director perfunctorily brushed off Five Nights. He looked at Unscathed in Battle, who looked like he was going to cut him up at any time, and squeezed out a smile. "Then I'll be leaving first. You guys continue with your work." Unscathed in Battle and Yutian Shenming didn't know that in this short period of time, the other party had so many thoughts. Even the Nitrite Radicals had interfered. The two were at a loss. Unscathed in Battle scratched his head and said, "Then is Five Nights still coming?" "Five Nights? He's already offline. How can he come?" After saying this, he hurriedly left. He also knew the pros and cons of this matter. This required those pure players to take the initiative. It was better for those with studio identities to not interfere. "Five Nights is offline? Really?" Unscathed in Battle said. "I think it's a trap. He's using this method to trick us into leaving and then sneak over." Yutian Shenming was also a little clever. However, at this time, this small matter had already been mixed with the interests of many parties. It was very complicated. His little cleverness obviously couldn't see through it. While the two of them were muttering to themselves, they still informed everyone about what was going on. "He's offline? That's fast," Han Family Young Master said. Those who were familiar with the situation immediately knew that this guy had predicted it. So, Unscathed in Battle and Yutian Shenming didn't say anything. They wouldn't say anything like, pretending to be offline. That would be looking for contempt. Han Family Young Master was still cautious. He went to find Nitrite Radicals for confirmation. He knew that Nitrite Radicals had a way to do it. Nitrite Radicals strongly supported Han Family Young Master's actions, but after completely understanding the pros and cons, he couldn't be too obvious. So, he laughed it off and said something. "I'm not here. Do you need something? Do you need me to get someone to send a letter?" Han Family Young Master found it funny when he received his reply. Previously, when he told him to kill this person, Nitrite Radicals muttered that killing people wouldn't affect their studio much. Now, it seemed like he finally understood. Killing people was just a means, and the goal was actually to restrict the other party's actions. "All right, got it. I'll look for you if there's anything." What kind of brain did the young master of the Han family have? He wouldn't be as stupid as Nitrite. He immediately understood this fellow's thoughts, so he didn't take the initiative to ask about the benefits of doing so, because he knew that Nitrite had completely understood. Sure enough, Nitrite Radical's reply was subtle, but full of ambiguity. Don't be shy. Just tell me if there's anything. We're already friends. Of course. Han family young master replied with a smile. They were just chatting in the game. Did he have to be so secretive? Han family young master really wanted to look down on Nitrite Radicals. However, he remembered that the studio was a relatively special group. Their influence on the game was actually much greater than any top player. Perhaps the game company was monitoring them behind the scenes? It seemed like he had to be more cautious. Private chats might not necessarily be an airtight wall. Han family young master also informed Cloud Twilight and the others that 5 Nights was temporarily offline. Cloud Twilight had already left. He had established a relationship with Sheng like summer, and he clearly felt that his threats and promises were effective. He added that person as a friend, and he also knew about the warehouse. Cloud Twilight felt that the location was relatively easy to control, so he made a scroll with coordinates and prepared to fly back. Although Cloud Twilight was the guild leader of a big guild, he wasn't very rich. This time, the scroll was flying around, and it made his heart ache. Fortunately, he had the huge sum of money that Qianli had given him when he was drunk, so he didn't have to worry about making ends meet. Letting the players in the guild raise funds was actually quite annoying. Cloud Twilight was actually glad that he had this sum of money. When he returned to Grassy City, Han family young master was still sitting at that table in the tavern. He hadn't moved a single inch. The only change was that there were more bottles in front of him. Just how much can this person drink? Cloud Twilight, who had just experienced getting drunk, admired Han family young master's alcohol tolerance to the extreme. As for this guy sitting there and not going out to work, he didn't mind at all. He sat down and asked, Han family young master, what do you think next? Cloud Twilight had helped him come up with ideas and hadn't made any annoying comments. For the time being, Cloud Twilight had even called Han family young master, Han family young master. Next, what you think is the key? Han family young master said. What do you mean? Cloud Twilight asked. Do you want to play with Ying Qi's studio to death? Han family young master asked. Of course. Cloud Twilight didn't hesitate. Guard those warehouses, don't let them get the goods. Han family young master didn't disappoint Nitrite Radical's expectations and gave this vicious suggestion. Cloud Twilight's eyes immediately lit up. We already know of 18 warehouses. This corresponds to the number of directors they have. It's clear that this is almost all of Ying Qi's resources. If we can control it, it'll be a great blow to them. Han family young master said. I understand. Plus, their people don't have much fighting strength. This seems easy to do. Cloud Twilight was excited. They don't have much fighting strength, but don't forget, they have money. If they have no other choice, they'll definitely hire people to take back the warehouses. They're determined to get it, we definitely can't stop them. Han family young master said. That's not scary. If they're strong, we'll retreat. If they retreat, we'll attack. I want to see how the people they hired are going to pay. Per order? On time? Ha! Cloud Twilight laughed. Boss, they only need to go in once to make teleportation scrolls. One of Cloud Twilight's brothers reminded him. Really? Then let them keep using teleportation scrolls. The cost of transportation isn't low either. Cloud Twilight laughed. If they use teleportation scrolls to slowly move the goods to a new warehouse, we won't be able to track them. Han family young master said. I don't think it's realistic to use such a small method to completely toy with Ying Qi. Cloud Twilight said. So you just want to give them as much trouble as possible? Han family young master asked. That's right. Cloud Twilight laughed. Then do your best. Han family young master laughed. However, at least Ying Qi has a force that can be used immediately. You're talking about the Eagle Group? That's right, I think they've already hidden themselves. Han family young master said. Chapter 847. The scale of this poaching operation was no longer a secret in the gaming industry. Yun Teng's identity had been exposed long ago. Many gaming studios were surprised that such a mediocre gaming studio could be so daring. The people in the gaming industry who had nothing to do with Ingqi were obviously gloating. However, Yun Teng's actions were still unpopular. Everyone started to pay attention to this gaming studio, just in case they were tricked one day. On the other hand, the bosses of the bigger gaming studios were more at ease. They knew the limits of the gaming studio's development. Yun Teng had almost taken over all of Ingqi's employees in one go. He had even offered them better benefits than Ingqi. With the size of their gaming studio, it would be a problem for them to digest the benefits. Some people even doubted the poaching operation. However, many people confirmed the news from unrivaled genius himself. Matchless Hero didn't just leave the matter to 5 Nights. He was also working hard in the offline world. He knew that Yun Teng Gaming Studio was behind this. This gaming studio didn't have much experience. Unparalleled Wonder hoped to use his many years of connections and influence in the gaming industry to put some pressure on Yun Teng. However, the result wasn't optimistic. Everyone was in a competitive relationship. Even if they were friends, they seemed to be united on the surface. Moreover, Unparalleled Wonder didn't try very hard to build a good relationship with his peers. After this incident, the gaming studios that he approached all gave excuses. They all knew that Yun Teng's studio needed to be taken seriously. However, Matchless Wonder just wanted to use their strength to recover their lost territory. No one wanted to restrict Yun Teng and help Ingqi regain her position. They were more than happy to see both sides suffer. At this moment, they were more than happy to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. There was no need for them to get involved. Unparalleled Wonder's operation wasn't going well. At this time, he received a message from 5 Nights. The troublemakers hadn't given up yet. They were getting more and more outrageous. Their claws had already extended to their warehouse. Unparalleled Wonder was furious when he heard this. He felt that this was no longer something an ordinary player could do. There had to be a gaming studio behind this. Who could it be? Wasn't it obvious? Do these guys really ignore the rules? Unparalleled Wonder was furious, and because of this, he began to lobby his peers, denouncing Cloud Teng's despicable behavior. He told them that it would be a disaster for everyone if they let such a despicable studio grow. Obviously, the method of controlling resources in the game was much scarier than poaching people. With this statement, many studios began to panic. They began to feel that they couldn't let Yun Teng continue like this. Although Yun Teng Studio was a new studio that started relatively late, it was not a closed shop. It had a say in the industry. They had to clarify what Matchless Wonder had said this time, because everyone knew the stakes in this matter. Yun Teng naturally translated Matchless Hero's despicable words as slander. When the people in the industry saw that these two families were really going to fight, they happily watched from the sidelines. Logically speaking, Yun Teng shouldn't have the right to challenge Unparalleled Wonder Studio, but with this move, everyone looked at him in a different light. Unparalleled Wonder couldn't organize an attack against Yun Teng, so he could only sigh and return to the game with 5 Nights. Only then did he understand 5 Nights' situation in detail. Have you contacted the others? Unparalleled Wonder was obviously referring to the other directors. Not yet. I think these guys are now Yun Teng's people, and they're probably trying to cause trouble. I don't think they're reliable, said 5 Nights. You're right, we can't be too careful. Unparalleled Wonder nodded. He had long suspected that Yun Teng was behind all this. How could he trust these people who had been poached by Yun Teng? Boss, the Eagle Group. Although Unparalleled Wonder didn't tell 5 Nights about the Eagle Group, 5 Nights was still a scheming person. His boss was obviously going to take revenge, so he paid attention to the situation in Moonlit City. This was his territory, and there were even gunmen on the forums. 5 Nights could tell that the Eagle Group was being used by his boss to deal with the 10 Guild Alliance. They're my people, so there's no problem. Unparalleled Wonder nodded. It seems like we can only ask them to help with the transfer of the supplies. I'll go look for a new warehouse, and you can contact the other directors to see what they're up to. Unparalleled Wonder had mixed feelings about Five Nights. He was one of the few people he could use at the moment, but this disaster was caused by him. Although Unparalleled Wonder criticized Yun Teng's underhanded behavior, he didn't believe that Yun Teng was the one who ordered them to guard the warehouse. Ordinary players must have thought of this first, and this matter had nothing to do with Yun Teng. Even if they gave him some information, it wouldn't be a problem. Why did the ordinary players treat Age Qi with such hatred and want to kill them all? Wasn't it all because of the failure of Wu Ye's plan? Unparalleled Wonder really wanted to beat Five Nights up, but he could only endure it for now. Now that Five Nights had left, there was really no one left by his side. Although there were still some second-rate people in charge of the various cities, they were a far cry from the directors in terms of ability and credibility. The people from the Eagle Group were only hired thugs. Unparalleled Wonder had never allowed them to interfere with the business. These people were also die-hard fans of the game, so they probably didn't have the heart to become merchants in the game. Matchless Hero was also full of worries and started to look for a new location for the warehouse. This time, he decided to unify the warehouse in one place and use trustworthy people to look after it. The address had to be kept a secret, even for directors. This place would become the foundation of Unparalleled Wonder Studio. As for the directors, they could develop their own temporary warehouses, but 50%, no, 60% of the resources of the studio had to be in this warehouse. Unparalleled Wonder was indeed a leading figure in the industry. He had learned from his mistakes. Five Nights continued to contact the other directors. Since Nitrite Radical couldn't directly participate in this matter, he obviously couldn't give these directors orders to cause trouble. Everything depended on their understanding. This time, Five Nights didn't foolishly run over. Instead, he told the director to make a teleportation scroll in the warehouse and send it to him. The newly contacted director wasn't very happy with Five Nights' request, but he had no choice but to do as he was told. At this time, the 10 Guild Alliance players who were guarding the warehouses had given new instructions. Five Nights could continue killing, but he had to ensure that no one entered the warehouse. When the director arrived at the warehouse, he was met with 4 rude and unreasonable people who questioned his purpose and refused to let him enter. The director was stunned. He definitely couldn't beat them, and the people who tried to reason with him didn't listen. In the end, he could only reply to Five Nights truthfully. This director was an honest person. From the beginning to the end, he didn't have as many thoughts and deductions as the previous director and Xing Ruxia. Five Nights had no choice but to change to the next director, but all the directors met the same obstacle. Wu Yi, who had established his own company in Yunteng, would definitely stand on Yunteng's side, so he just gave an excuse. As for the other directors, most of them were very perceptive. They understood the spirit of struggle and went to talk to Five Nights. Of course, there were some who were a little more straightforward like the third director, but they were all professional businessmen without much combat power. They naturally couldn't do anything about the 10 Guild Alliance's forceful obstruction. Five Nights calculated in his heart. He already felt that what he was doing was useless, but since it was his boss's order, he could only continue to follow. The only fun he had in doing this now was to judge the other party's reaction based on his understanding of the other party. At this time, the directors were no longer waiting for Wu Yi to contact them. After a few of them encountered this kind of abnormal situation, they discussed it with their friends who were on good terms with them. They spread the news to each other, and soon, everyone knew about it. At this time, even those who were more straightforward understood that this matter wasn't as simple as it seemed after the analysis of others. Everyone clearly understood that they needed to stand on the side of the new owner. However, they still had to go through the motions. Therefore, anyone who Five Nights contacted would run to the warehouse. Then, as expected, they would be blocked. They would seriously argue with them for a while, then helplessly leave and reply to Five Nights. Five Nights numbly repeated the contact and heard almost the same answer. He didn't have any expectations, but he was pleasantly surprised. He wasn't the only one who was surprised. After Five Nights contacted him, the directors of the 5 main cities in the southeast also went to his warehouse in Grassy City as a formality. In the end, what he saw was not the situation described by the other directors. There weren't 4 silent, fierce men standing solemnly outside his warehouse door. There was only a black-robed mage player who seemed to be very bored and squatted on the eaves above the door. He looked a little absent-minded with his hand on his chin. Is it this person? 5 Knights couldn't understand for a moment. He could only continue to walk forward while paying attention to this person's movements. This person obviously saw him and stared at him, but he didn't speak. He watched him walk closer step by step until he reached the warehouse door. This person still didn't say a word. Bang! The warehouse door opened, but this person still didn't respond at all. He entered the warehouse in a minute and a half, but for a moment, he didn't come back to his senses. But very quickly he saw several figures in the warehouse in a minute and a half. This shocked him and he cried out involuntarily, "Who's there?" "Manager, 1 minute, it's us." A person stood up from a corner and smiled as he greeted 1 minute and a half. This warehouse was piled up everywhere, so there were naturally some places with poor lighting. 1 minute and a half's eyebrows furrowed and he finally saw clearly. "Everlasting? Is that you?" As the director of the southeast side, 1 minute and a half's knew about the Eagle Group and Everlasting. He also knew that the Eagle Group was related to their boss. The boss didn't tell him exactly what their relationship was, so 1 minute and a half's tactful didn't ask too much and didn't tell anyone else. But even though he recognized these people, 1 minute and a half's shock was still there. Unparalleled wonder gave them access to such an important place like the warehouse. It could be seen that the trust these people had was no lower than that of the directors. 1 minute, you're here to count, right? Everlasting asked. After unparalleled wonder came online, he immediately told them to put aside the matter of dealing with the 10 Society Alliance and get ready to clear the obstacles in the warehouses of the various main cities. Unparalleled wonder had just come online, so he obviously didn't know that Everlasting and them were facing a new situation. "Yeah, you guys too?" 1 minute and a half's confusion. "Of course not, continue what you have to do." Everlasting smiled. 1 minute and a half's confusion continued, but he still took out a teleportation scroll and started to make coordinates. "When you came, did you see anyone outside?" Everlasting asked. "Yes, there was a guy squatting on top of the door." 1 minute and a half's reply. "Black robe? A mage?" Everlasting asked. 1 minute and a half nodded. "This guy is really patient." Everlasting couldn't help but exclaim. "Is there a problem?" 1 minute and a half's reply. "He didn't make things difficult for you?" Everlasting asked. 1 minute and a half shook his head. "Why is it like this? Didn't they stop people from entering the warehouse?" Someone at the side was confused. "Because there's no need. With us here, we can use teleportation scrolls to bring people in at any time, so what's the point of them blocking this warehouse?" Everlasting said. "Oh." Everyone understood. 1 minute and a half's reply was why he didn't encounter the same situation as the other directors. He didn't know if this was a good or bad thing. It seemed like his inventory was going to go smoothly. Would the new owner have any objections? 1 minute and a half's reply was depressing. He didn't like this special situation, but what could he do? Did he have to make up a lie to pass the 5 Knights? But that was impossible. With these people already in the warehouse, they could enter at any time, and he still had to do an inventory. It seemed like unless he died, he really couldn't avoid this special situation. Helplessly, 1 minute and a half's coordinates were set, and he left after saying goodbye to Everlasting and the others. He felt very uneasy. After leaving the door, he turned around and saw that the guy on the roof was still looking at him, but this time he was smiling. "Hi." That guy actually waved at him in greeting. "Hi." 1 minute and a half's reply was lost. "How many people are inside now?" That guy suddenly asked. "About 7 or 8. Let me think, 7. 1 minute and a half's reply was very hard to provide information to Gu Fei. He realized that he couldn't stop the inventory on his side, so he had to contribute elsewhere. "Do you know all of them?" Gu Fei asked. "I only know one person, Everlasting." 1 minute and a half's reply. "Oh." Gu Fei nodded. "Thank you. Is there anything else?" 1 minute and a half's reply was a little reluctant to leave. Nothing else, you can go back to your work. Gu Fei said. 1 minute and a half's reply was to leave anxiously. Gu Fei opened the mission bar and counted. There were still 6 targets of the Eagle Group in his mission, and their coordinates were indeed in this warehouse. Now that he had asked Everlasting, it seemed like the others already knew that Gu Fei wouldn't be able to locate them without PK points, so they left the place in a carefree manner. Gu Fei took out the list and accepted the mission again. As expected, they all had no PK points. There are only 7 people left in the Eagle Group, and I don't know where the other 13 are. Also, they don't only have 20 people online, but all 30 of them. Gu Fei sent a message to Han Family Young Master. His wanted search would receive a notification when the target was not online, so this was the system's way of doing things. Players having PK points had nothing to do with whether they were online or not. If they were in the wanted mission office, the number of those who were not online would be automatically blocked from the list. However, this was how Gu Fei accepted the mission. In order to prevent players from accepting targets that were not online, the system would give such a notification. Looks like they are really going to make a move. Han Family Young Master was still in the tavern, collecting information from various sources. He knew the process of 5 knights going from place to place. The reason why he didn't ask Gu Fei to stop them from going to Grassy City was because he knew that it would be useless to stop them. Yun Zhongmu remained in the tavern and didn't leave. He and the young master of the Han family continued to discuss how to proceed. Hearing young Master Han's words, he immediately perked up and asked, "They've already taken stock here?" Han family young master nodded. Good. Yun Zhongmu stood up, full of fighting spirit. Since Grassy City had become a place where they couldn't stop people from entering the warehouse, it was the perfect opportunity to deal a blow to the other party. Unless the other party wanted to use a teleportation scroll as an extravagant method, they would need the Eagle Party to escort them during the transfer process. Han Family Young Master was more interested in the Eagle Group than Ing Chi. However, there are only 7 people in the Eagle Group. Other than that, there are another 23 people who are online, but we don't know where they are. We need to be careful. Han Family Young Master said. You're saying that those people might split up to deal with the guards at the warehouses? Yun Zhongmu said. Han Family Young Master nodded. Of course it's possible. Isn't that even better? Yun Zhongmu smiled. Of course. It was rare for the young master of the Han clan to laugh together with Yun Zhongmu. Chapter 848. Brother Chiu was the leader of Eagle Squad's 3rd squad. He was a berserker ranked 7th on the warrior leaderboard. He had chosen the name Brother Chiu purely out of malice. He hoped that others would call him brother when they called him by his name. However, things didn't turn out as he wished. In reality, because of this name, fewer and fewer people were willing to call him brother. In reality, this didn't have much to do with the name. The key was that Brother Chiu would always be proud of being called Brother Chiu by others. Thus, he never called himself Brother again. Even the other 9 subordinates of his 3rd squad didn't call him brother. Even though he was undoubtedly the leader of the squad in terms of level and age, but Brother Chiu. Someone beside him called Brother Chiu. This was Brother Chiu's new name in Eagle Squad. It was a name that was close to insulting him. This made him extremely depressed, but the more he resisted, the more people liked calling him Brother Chiu. It was like the reverse psychology of calling him brother. Fuck off. Call me brother. However, Brother Chiu would never give up resisting. Brother my ass. I say, do we get overtime pay for working overtime this time? The person who called Brother Chiu said. This player was called Temporary Execution. His name sounded like an assassin, but he was actually a light priest. He was ranked 12th on the priest leaderboard. How would I know? Brother Chiu replied. The name debate ended after 2 rounds. This was a fixed pattern. When someone called him, Brother Chiu resisted for a bit and then said whatever he wanted to say. I heard that Do Qing, Lu Lan, Shisan, and 18 are all dead. Temporary Execution said. Yes, Shisan is still in prison, Brother Chiu said. What kind of reinforcements did they get? With the strength of their Eagle squad, losing 4 people in one go was something that had never happened before. Moreover, Lulan, Shisan, and 18 were all fast players. If they couldn't win, they would always run. It was obviously more difficult to kill them. I heard that people came from Cloud City. Qianli, Drunk, and Drifting are all here. There should be other experts as well. As the leader, Brother Chiu was very serious about private chatting with Eternal. In the mercenary group channel, Eternal only briefly explained the current situation and what the boss wanted everyone to do. Is it that Drifting? Temporary Execution asked. Who else could be Drifting? Brother Chiu said. Then it's just the 3 of us. Is that okay? She was a little nervous at the last minute. We've already scouted out the enemy's experts. We're only facing 4 ordinary players from the 10 Guilds Alliance. Moreover, even if the opponent is an expert that is difficult to deal with, we don't have to be afraid. It's not like we have to fight to the death with them. If the situation isn't right, we can just find an opportunity to rush into the warehouse and complete our mission. In short, kill if you can. If the situation doesn't look good, hide in the room. Brother Chiu, who was able to become the team leader, might have a wretched way of naming things, but he was still a guy with calm judgment. Along with Brother Chiu and Temporary Execution, the 3rd player was called Constant Warmth. He was ranked 14th on the Mage leaderboard, right next to P. Green Bull. Now that P. Green Bull had died somewhere, he wasn't happy at all even though he had risen to 13th place. He had a pretty good relationship with Little Bean Green Bull. At this moment, he was expressing his condolences, so he didn't really participate in the discussion about Brother Chiu and the temporary execution. It seems to be this street. Brother Chiu looked at the address in his hand. Their Eagle Corps usually gathered on the rooftop of the warehouse in Grassy City. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, they almost never entered the warehouse even though they had the authority to do so. Naturally, they didn't know where the warehouses in the other main cities were. At this moment, they had found their way here with the address. Brother Chiu and the others were closer. They had teleported here with the city's teleportation scroll. After walking a few steps, they were on the street. B17, B17. Brother Chiu muttered the house number as he searched for it. Temporary Execution carefully observed the surroundings. Hung Wen also stopped chatting with P. Green Bowl and gripped his staff tightly as he followed behind the 2. 12, 13. As Brother Chiu counted, he looked over and saw what he guessed to be house number B17. It was a building that looked like the one in Grassy City. It was in the style of Inga's warehouse, and downstairs, there were indeed 4 people standing against the wall in front of the door. They kept looking left and right, sizing up the place. At this moment, there was no one else on the street. Their gazes had already fallen on the 3 of them and they gripped their weapons tightly. Brother Chiu and the other 2 continued forward without batting an eyelid. When they got closer, they used their appraisal skill on them one by one. Temporary Execution heaved a sigh of relief. It doesn't seem difficult. I told you, said Brother Chiu. Constant Warmth, get ready. Constant Warmth didn't say a word. He raised his staff and started chanting. However, he didn't summon the 2 most commonly used fire area of effect spells. Instead, he heard Hangwen call out, Forest of Ice Peaks, and a series of pring 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 sounds of ice shattering could be heard from the street. Instead, a series of icicles flashed and rose from the ground. A cold and gloomy aura spread out, and the air seemed to be permeated with a thin blue and white color. The 4 players had participated in the battle against the 30 members of the Eagle Group, but they hadn't seen the Mage of the Eagle Group use this spell. The 4 players didn't know how powerful the spell was, nor did they know what it was used for. They just carefully avoided the ice spikes drilling under their feet, trying to rush out of this area of ice spikes. Who would have thought that the thermostatic staff would wave horizontally and yell, "Break!" The icicles that were stabbed out suddenly exploded. Small ice shards flew at high speed, and the 4 of them had no way of avoiding such small and dense ice shards. The ice shards hit their bodies and the damage accumulated. The 4 players' HP kept dropping. The moment the icicles shattered, the freezing effect of the ice spell came into effect. The 4 players' movements were greatly slowed. One of the 4 clerics wanted to quickly heal, but his movements were slow. Naturally, he was also very surprised at the percentage of the freeze effect. With great difficulty, he pointed his staff at the target, but the icicles didn't stop. Every small ice shard counted as damage. Under these circumstances, his spells were constantly interrupted and he couldn't cast any spells. Constant warmth was expressionless outside the circle. Brother Chiu also didn't plan on attacking. He let out a sigh of relief and laughed. It really isn't that difficult. Here's the difficulty. Suddenly, a voice came from behind them. The 3 turned around in shock and saw a black-robed sorcerer standing behind them. Qianli's drunk? Brother Chiu cried out. Qianli's drunk suddenly disappeared. In a flash, he appeared between the 3 players. He twisted his body and spun his sword. He turned around and slashed at the 3 players with a dual flame flash. Whirlwind slash. Brother Chiu also shouted. Seeing that he couldn't dodge the dual flame flash, he actually used a skill to trade health with the opponent. Gu Fei didn't expect this guy to be so calm and react so quickly. He had just turned around and slashed at one of the players with a dual flame flash. No matter what, he didn't dare face the opponent's whirlwind slash head-on. He immediately retreated out of the circle. Unexpectedly, constant warmth also took half a step back. This actually blocked Gu Fei's path of retreat. Moreover, the 2 of them were out of the range of the whirlwind slash. This left Gu Fei an opening on both sides, but Gu Fei, with his accurate judgment, knew that this was a trap. His path of retreat was blocked. He didn't have enough time to dodge to the left or right. Gu Fei, who had no room to dodge, immediately swung his sword in front of him to block. It had been a long time since Gu Fei had used this rough method to block the whirlwind slash. Moreover, against a 2-handed berserker's whirlwind slash, this block had to be faster and more accurate. In a moment of life and death, Gu Fei still managed to do it. The dark streak accurately and timely collided with Brother Chiu's sword the moment before the whirlwind slash reached him. Gu Fei knew that this top expert's strength and skill was definitely not to be underestimated. He gripped his sword with all his might. The instant the force of the blow hit him, he immediately flew backwards. This release wasn't complete. After all, the strength and speed of Brother Chiu's whirlwind slash weren't something an ordinary player could compare to. Pushing 1,000 caddies with little effort was just a visual description. In reality, to use this kind of technique, one's own strength also needed to have a certain foundation. Brother Chiu's whirlwind slash with his luxurious equipment more or less exceeded the limits of Gu Fei's current strength. However, he wasn't completely hit. Gu Fei had already deduced this point. The dark streak was shattered by Brother Chiu's whirlwind slash, but only a bit of sword wind was left as it swept past Gu Fei's body. Gu Fei borrowed this force to fly backwards and crash into Temporary Execution, who was diagonally behind him. Temporary Execution didn't have the strength, nor did he have the skill to dissipate the force. When Gu Fei crashed into him with the force of the whirlwind slash, Temporary Execution stumbled back several steps and fell face first to the ground. Before he could react, he saw a black silhouette come closer and closer, growing larger and larger, resolutely using him as a meat cushion. That wasn't all. Gu Fei's combat sense was just too professional. Even in this situation, he didn't miss any opportunity to attack. The instant he landed on Death Sentence's body, he held the Dark Knight Streamlight sword in a reverse grip and struck Death Sentence's waist. This was just a normal attack, so the damage wasn't high. When Gu Fei fell, his feet were still on the ground. His body fell onto Temporary Execution's body, and he immediately used the rebound to twist his waist and spring up. This gave Hengwen a huge fright. Everything had happened so quickly. At the time, he had been behind Qianli, so he didn't see what technique Gu Fei had used. He only thought that Gu Fei had been sent flying by the whirlwind slash. Even though it was a bit strange for him to fly into Temporary Execution's body, Hengwen didn't think too much about it. Seeing Temporary Execution fall to the ground after Qianli's drunkenness, Hengwen thought that this was the perfect opportunity to attack. He raised his staff and was about to attack Gu Fei. Who would have thought that Gu Fei, who had just fallen to the ground, was like a spring? In that instant he bounced back up again. Moreover, the sword light flashed, and the target was actually Heng Wen. At this time, Heng Wen's chain fireball was already at the end of its chant, and he resolutely sent it out. At such a close distance, he didn't think anyone would be able to dodge it, but Gu Fei was able to. His body suddenly flipped in the air again, and he managed to dodge the chain fireballs. Heng Wen's chain fireball was originally aimed at the fallen Gu Fei. The angle was downward, so of course, it didn't fly high. When Gu Fei flipped over, he didn't relax his grip on his sword. A dark light flashed, and Heng Wen felt a chill on his neck. Even though it was just a normal attack and the damage wasn't high, that feeling made Heng Wen's hair stand on end. He almost thought that he was a dead man. Heng Wen wasn't dead yet, but temporary execution was almost angered to death. Gu Fei flipped over the chain fireballs, but the chain fireballs continued to fly forward. As a result, temporary execution, who was lying on his back, was blasted into a bloody mess. Temporary execution opened his mouth to curse, but when he turned his gaze, he saw that Heng Wen was already at a loss because of Qianli's drunkenness. In close combat, Heng Wen couldn't cast a single spell. His eyes were filled with pleas for help. Temporary execution hurriedly grabbed his staff to heal Heng Wen, but who would have thought that Qianli wouldn't even turn his head? As if he knew what he was going to do, he took a step forward. Fuck! Impromptu execution. These expert skills were both fast and accurate. Gu Fei's step was also shamelessly accurate. Impromptu execution's resurrection had actually landed on Gu Fei. Many thanks. Gu Fei actually turned around and smiled at temporary execution. Under Gu Fei's barrage of attacks, Heng Wen's health quickly fell. He was a mage, so the physical damage of the night streamer was still reflected on him. Moreover, Gu Fei's attacks were so fast that Heng Wen felt like vomiting. Fast. Everything could only be described as fast. From the moment Gu Fei was sent flying, to the moment he bounced back up, to the moment temporary execution attacked, everything had happened so quickly. When Brother Chiu retracted his whirlwind slash, Gu Fei had already bounced back up and slashed at Heng Wen's neck with rapid fireball. Brother Chiu wanted to rush over to help, but he forgot that Gu Fei wasn't fighting alone. The 4 members of the 10 Guild Alliance were suppressed by Heng Wen's skill. However, this was an unfamiliar skill that they had never dealt with before. Their equipment and techniques might not be as good as the experts of Eagle Corps, but they had their own determination. At this moment, they broke through Heng Wen's skill and charged forward. They didn't care how much health they had left. The 4 of them gritted their teeth and charged at Brother Chiu. Their judgment of the situation was still relatively accurate. Brother Chiu had no choice but to turn around and face the enemy. If Heng Wen wanted to be saved, this was the moment. Brother Chiu couldn't free up his hands, so Gu Fei had already used his ultimate skill. Dual flame flash, thunder palm, and even a bolt of lightning that descended from the sky. With great difficulty, he crawled back up from the ground and found a place to heal Heng Wen's temporary execution. Suddenly, he saw a flash of white light. It wasn't the white light that landed on Heng Wen's head, but the white light of Heng Wen's death. Too slow. Gu Fei smiled as he swept a glance at him, but ignored him. Instead, he charged towards Brother Chiu's encirclement and gave the other 4 a look. You guys go deal with him. Even though there were clerics among the 4, they were all affected by the skill, constant temperature. Their health wasn't full, and Brother Chiu's damage was terrifying. In just a short while, one of them was already on the verge of death. Gu Fei appeared just in time. The 4 obediently retreated, but Brother Chiu recklessly charged forward. Even though Gu Fei had attacked him, besieging Wei to rescue Zhao wasn't that useful in the game. Brother Chiu ignored Gu Fei's attack and stubbornly killed that player who didn't have much health left. The other 3 didn't pay much attention to him either. They fiercely charged towards temporary execution. It was clear that they wanted to take revenge on temporary execution. No matter how skilled temporary execution was, it was just a cleric. Against an encirclement, it could only rely on its own healing skills to survive. Right now, the only hope was for Brother Chiu to defeat Qianli and help him out. But how could anyone beat Gu Fei in a 1v1? Brother Chiu had already displayed 200% of the skills he had learned in the game, but he couldn't do anything to Gu Fei. Even though Gu Fei's sword stabbing into his armor didn't seem that scary, when the skill's cooldown ended and dual flame flash arrived, Brother Chiu looked expectantly at temporary execution. How could temporary execution not know that Brother Chiu needed its healing? But right now, even he himself was a bit overwhelmed. If he used another skill to heal Brother Chiu, would he be able to survive? This was a difficult decision. With his current skills, he could only help one person survive if he decided to execute him on the spot. This difficult decision, temporary execution, was made in just 2 seconds. He gritted his teeth and used a healing skill on Brother Chiu. He roared, "Get into the warehouse!" Brother Chiu understood what temporary execution meant because this was the decision he had made before the battle. Kill if he could. If the situation wasn't right, he would run into the house. Brother Chiu regretted his decision. Why didn't he just run into the house without caring about anything? If that had been the case, they might have already killed their way into the house. Those 4 players wouldn't have been able to stop the 3 of them from killing them. In the end, once Qianli got drunk, the situation changed. Right now, temporary execution was forced against the opposite wall. It was impossible for him to get close to the warehouse. Right now, he was the only one who could charge into the warehouse. Temporary execution could only sacrifice himself. For Brother Chiu, this decision was equally difficult, but he had no other choice. Temporary execution cast a decisive healing skill on him. Right now, he was only helping temporary execution stall the 3 players. Ah! Brother Chiu roared angrily. He looked in the direction of the warehouse door and charged forward. Brother Chiu believed that even if Qianli got drunk, he wouldn't be able to stop his charge. As long as he reached the door, he could take 2 of Qianli's drunk attacks and charge through the door. As expected, Qianli's drunk couldn't stop the sharpness of charge. Brother Chiu only had eyes for the tightly shut door. Suddenly, he felt his abdomen sink. An irresistible force assaulted him. He could no longer continue charging forward. Chapter 849. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Brother Chiu wouldn't have believed that such a thing could happen. He felt a push from his abdomen. Brother Chiu looked down and saw Gu Fei crouching down beside him. Gu Fei's left palm accurately pressed against his abdomen. Electric currents crisscrossed, and Brother Chiu felt his body turn sluggish. He knew that Qianli, drunk, could teleport, but charge's speed was so fast that even if he could teleport, the movement was too precise, and the palm strike was just right. Brother Chiu didn't think that this was any kind of skill. It was simply a miracle. Just as Brother Chiu's heart sank, he realized that his charge didn't stop there. He actually continued to rush forward, and Qianli, drunk's palm strike seemed to have exhausted all of its resistance. Brother Chiu was ecstatic. He knew that charge's priority was a notch higher. He was so excited that he was on the verge of tears. He turned his head to look at temporary execution, hoping that his comrades could share this moment of joy with him. Sure enough, temporary execution was also looking at him. Seeing him look over, it gave him a thumbs up, but the next moment, temporary execution turned into a white light. Giving Brother Chiu a healing spell had still hastened his death. Brother Chiu's heart was filled with grief. But at least his brothers hadn't died in vain. They had finally completed their mission. At this moment, Gu Fei was also very helpless. He had hoped that the Thunder Palm's knockback could interrupt Brother Chiu's charge, but it looked like Brother Chiu's charge was still a little more effective. Gu Fei was also a little regretful. It looked like he should have teleported the instant Brother Chiu's skill ended and knocked him back, or he could have used a wall of electricity to temporarily seal the warehouse door. These were all methods, and they might have been more effective. Unfortunately, he hadn't used them. At this moment, even if he wanted to use wall of electricity, he couldn't. The pace of the previous battle had been very fast, and Gu Fei had consumed a lot of mana. Even mana cycle couldn't keep up. Right now, he didn't have enough mana to use wall of electricity, which was currently the most mana-consuming skill for Gu Fei. Brother Chiu kept looking behind him. When he saw that 1,000 Miles Drunk wasn't chasing after him, A look of regret appeared in his eyes. He knew that he had really made it through this time. Brother Chiu, who had just finished his charge, had stopped right in front of the door. He didn't dare hesitate, reaching out his hand to push the door open. Unexpectedly, a powerful force came from his abdomen again. Brother Chiu looked down in shock. There was no one there, just a flash of lightning, and he immediately retreated involuntarily. Even Gu Fei hadn't expected this turn of events. The knockback from the Thunder Palm didn't stop Brother Chiu from charging forward, but who knew that the effect could be hidden? When Brother Chiu's charge ended, the knockback effect suddenly erupted and pushed Brother Chiu away from the door. The one who suffered the most was undoubtedly Brother Chiu. In just 1 or 2 seconds, he had gone from heaven to hell, then from hell to heaven, and then from heaven to hell again. The one who suffered the most was undoubtedly Brother Chiu. In just 1 or 2 seconds, he had gone from heaven to hell, then from hell to heaven, and now from heaven to hell again. Brother Chiu was undoubtedly in the most pain. In just 1 or 2 seconds, he had gone from heaven to hell, then from hell to heaven, and now he was back to hell. While Brother Chiu was still retreating, a dual flame flash brushed past his body. The other 3 also surrounded him. They only cared about greeting Brother Chiu with their most powerful skills. Brother Chiu couldn't deal with Gu Fei alone, and now that he couldn't heal, how could he win against the 3 of them? What's more, the other side had a cleric to heal them. The strong Brother Chiu tried to kill one of them, but in the end he could only fall unwillingly. The one who gave him the fatal blow was naturally Gu Fei. The dual flame flash and thunder palm combo pushed Brother Chiu back a few steps. The warehouse door was getting further and further away from him. Dead. The moment Brother Chiu's white light disappeared, the 310 Meetings Alliance players were a little excited and couldn't believe it. They already had an intuitive impression of the other party's strength during the confrontation. Even the cleric, who couldn't fight back, had relied on healing to hold on for a long time. If it wasn't for a healing spell being used on the warrior, perhaps he would still be alive. As for this warrior, even the 4 of them couldn't take him down. Instead, he killed one of them. It was clear how strong he was. As for the sorcerer, if it wasn't for Qianli's timely appearance, the 4 of them would probably have died under that skill. Dead. Gu Fei nodded. Naturally, he didn't think that these people were that strong. However, as he expected, they were all killed one by one. Do you know their names? Gu Fei took out the name list of the members of the Eagle Group to check who had died. No idea. The 3 shook their heads. It's a pity we don't even know their names. Gu Fei sighed. He had drawn a circle behind the names of those he had killed, indicating that he had already killed them once. Thank goodness you came in time, Brother Drunk. The 3 of them were still immersed in the excitement of victory. It was your timely news, Gu Fei said. The 3 of them laughed foolishly. However, when Eternity heard this grievous news, he couldn't bring himself to smile at all. They had fallen into another trap. Just like how P. Green Bowl and Lu Lan had been killed in Moonlit Night City, the enemy had obviously predicted their actions and formulated a highly targeted strategy. This time, the opponent had prepared scrolls in every warehouse. If one side was in trouble, they would be able to send help from all sides. Moreover, the opponent had calculated that Eagle Corps would split up to attack, so it would be easier for them to send help. Just like what had happened just now, even though Brother Chiu and the other 2 had gone, the other party had only sent 1,000 miles drunk to finish them all off. Eternal believed that if there were more than 3 people going, then Qianli's drunk wouldn't be the only one who would be sent over. If his entire team attacked one point, how many people would be sent over? Would it be a team that could contend against their Eagle Corps? Eternal was originally very confident in their Eagle Corps. He could tell from the fact that 30 of them dared to directly clash with 100 from the 10 Guild Alliance. However, Qianli's drunk was a terrifying opponent, and it was an unfathomable terror. This person wasn't on the same level as the in-game experts that Eternal knew. His playstyle and skills were like people from a different world. Stop all attacks for a moment. Eternal gave the order. The time it took for each city to teleport to attack was different. Brother Chiu and the others had been very happy that they were close, but it became the reason for their bad luck. Because they were close, the three of them were the first to reach the target, and so they were the first to be killed by Qianli's drunk. What if everyone attacks at the same time? Will the opponent be able to deal with it? Eternal had this thought before, but he didn't dare try it. No matter what, Qianli's drunk would always be able to teleport to another place, and this place seemed to have no chance of winning. Moreover, an expert like Drifting had already taken down Green Pea Bowl and Flowing Mist. If another team like this appeared, their chances of winning would be very high. This time, Eagle Core had split into teams of 2 or 3. If another 2 or 3 teams were wiped out, then the number of players that died today would be close to half of the team. Divide or unite, it doesn't seem safe. Brother Chiu and temporary execution. They could still make a choice before they died, but Eternal realized that he didn't have a choice at all. This was a dead end. Where was the way to resolve it? The 3 players from the 10 Guild Alliance were bragging about the dangers of the battle. They were talking about how brave Qianli's drunk was, and how dramatic the last few ups and downs were. The morale of the entire team was greatly boosted, and many players signed up to participate in the battle. Cloud Twilight was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. He personally congratulated Gu Fei. Gu Fei didn't think that he had just killed 3 more people, so there was nothing to be surprised about. He simply replied, "It's nothing." This caused Cloud Twilight to sigh. What do you think they'll do next? Cloud Twilight asked the Han family young master. Ever since this person started helping them, the situation had been constantly changing. Cloud Twilight couldn't help but admire this person. Even though his but had never left the bench, Cloud Twilight thought of the phrase, strategizing in the tent, deciding victory outside of Qianli. This was probably the situation. Deciding victory outside of Qianli? Don't tell me they're talking about Qianli getting drunk? Cloud Twilight also had times where he let his imagination run wild. Next, there doesn't seem to be any good choices. If they're stubborn, then they'll fight to the death. If they want to play it safe, then I think they'll choose to wait and see. After all, our people can't guard the warehouse 24/7. Han family's young master said. This is indeed a difficult problem. Cloud Twilight sighed. They had 4,000 players in their guild, but it was impossible for them to use all of them at once. The warehouse cities were scattered across the parallel world, so it was impossible to walk there. If they wanted to go there, they could only use teleportation scrolls. Such a large number of teleportation scrolls required the support of a large amount of money, and this amount of money wasn't something normal players could afford. Moreover, teleportation scrolls weren't something that could be casually dropped. They were also something that had a very limited production. It was only because of their high price that not many people could afford to play with them. If they used them crazily, there would be a time when they ran out. When that time came, they would be done for. Currently, many tactics relied on teleportation scrolls to continue. Teleportation scrolls cost 1,500 to 2,000 gold each, right? If I send 100 people to each city, 19 cities will have 1,900 people. 4 people for 1 card, so I'll need 475 cards. Even at the lowest price of 1,500, I'll still need 1,187,500 gold coins. Yun Zhongmu cursed after doing the math. Even if they all gathered the money, each person would need close to 300 gold. They definitely wouldn't be able to afford it. It's possible to gather the money, but that's not the way to go. I've already said that the workshop can hire hired thugs. In other words, we might be fighting against the strongest of the 19 cities. There's no way we can win. Perhaps we can harass them repeatedly, but will your guild's players be willing to continue doing things that have no benefit to them? If we want to mess with Ing Chi, we can't just harass them for 2 or 3 days. Han family young master said. Cloud Twilight was silent. Even though his guild was numerous, it had long since ceased to be of one mind, willing to follow whatever he said. In reality, they weren't as strong as they appeared to be on the surface. They were basically the same old group of people, with a small number of people who followed the same path as them joining later on. Then what do you think we should do? Cloud Twilight said. Try your best not to force them into such a dead end. Leave some openings for them to find an opportunity to take advantage of. That way, we will also have an opportunity to slowly wear them down. The Han family's young master said. Boiling a frog in warm water? Cloud Twilight thought of an analogy. Han family young master nodded his head. Currently, things are progressing too quickly and too intensely. Maybe Qianli should have let one of them in and let them achieve their goal. Now, they might feel like they don't have a choice, so it's hard to predict what they'll do next. Within Flourishing Grass City's warehouse, 5 knights and 1 minute and a half second were taking inventory. Beside him were Eternal and a few members of the Eagle group. They didn't care about what they were doing, but they all had unhappy expressions on their faces. 5 knights couldn't be bothered to care about it. He seized every minute and a half to carry out this rare opportunity to take stock. At this moment, 5 knights didn't know what would happen in the next second. A white light flashed in the warehouse. Everyone turned to look. It was the boss of Ingqi Workshop, Matchless Wonder, who had personally arrived. 5 knights wanted to report the progress, but Matchless Wonder waved his hand, indicating for him to continue working. Then, he walked over to Eternal and the others with the same unhappy expression on his face. 5 knights wanted to say something to 1 minute and a half second, but he suddenly realized that the person in front of him was no longer his colleague. As such, he swallowed his words. 5 knights snuck a glance at Matchless Wonder and the others. Sure enough, they were also wary of 1 minute and a half second, so they ran off to talk. Things aren't going well. Eternal helplessly reported to his boss. That Qianli is very strong when he's drunk. He's very hard to deal with. In addition, the other side predicted our intentions multiple times and set up an ambush. I think it should be that person from Cloud City called Han Family Young Master. Han Family Young Master? Matchless Wonder frowned. You know him? We've met before. Eternal said. What kind of person? Matchless Wonder asked. Eternal thought for a moment and only said one word. Sinister. What are the current losses? Matchless Wonder asked. 7 people lost levels, but they didn't lose any equipment. Eternal said. Then, he saw a look of consolation flash past Matchless Wonder's face. This made Eternal feel bad. It was clear that the boss didn't have much of a relationship with them. When he asked about the losses, he was probably concerned about the equipment. As for the players, there weren't that many pieces of equipment in the game, but the players were. Obtaining equipment required a considerable amount of luck. However, an expert's technique and awareness could be trained even if they had a full set of trash equipment. In fact, they might even be better than a player with a full set of top-tier equipment. Eternal felt a trace of sorrow for him and his brothers. What do you think we should do next? Matchless Wonder asked. Wait. Eternal said. They can't be online 24/7. Eternal said. Aren't we the same? Matchless Wonder said. But we only need to pay attention to one person. Eternal said. Qianli's drunk? Or is it the Han Family Young Master you were talking about? Matchless Wonder asked. Qianli's drunk. Eternal said. No matter how exquisite a trap is, it still requires a certain amount of strength to execute it. Without Qianli's drunk, I believe that our Eagle group will be able to fight them head-on. Therefore, we only need to wait until 1,000 Miles Drunk is offline. Then, it will be very advantageous to execute any plan. Matchless Wonder nodded. As for Qianli's drunk logging in and logging out, that was something they could control. Because 5 knights had the experience of getting drunk with Qianli, he had added him as a friend. Perhaps Qianli had deleted him or blacklisted him, but at the very least, he still had drunk Qianli's name on his side. Right now, I think everyone should go and rest. Just leave a few people here. As for the location we're going to attack, I want to make a teleportation scroll first. As soon as 1,000 Miles Drunk goes offline, immediately notify 30 people to come online and then directly teleport over to attack. That way, even if they also go offline and notify 1,000 Miles Drunk, I think we'll have no problem charging into any of the warehouses, Forever said. That's not a bad idea. Matchless Wonder nodded. First, we'll take back the warehouses. That way, even if there's a big deal, we won't be delayed. We can also take stock of the inventory. There's no need to rush the transfer of resources. Eternal didn't say a word about this. He was only involved in matters related to combat, such as killing a certain player, attacking a certain guild, or taking back a warehouse. He would come up with a plan. However, what Matchless Wonder had said was the arrangement of his workshop's business. Eternal never interfered or asked about it. Then I'll leave it to you. After this is done, come to me to collect some bonuses and give everyone a few days off. Matchless Wonder seemed to be very confident in Eternal's plan, and his mood became much better. He patted Eternal's shoulder and promised. Forever smiled faintly and replied, "Thank you, boss." Matchless Wonder then turned back to the inventory. He nodded at 5 Nights and didn't say anything. After looking at Minute and a Half, he walked up to Eternal and said, "Minute, how are you? Are you used to working at cloud soaring?" "But it's all right." Minute and a Half didn't expect his former boss to ask such a question. If there's anything you're not used to, you can come and find me anytime," Matchless Wonder said. Minute and a Half smiled bitterly. He didn't understand what his boss meant. Was he mocking him? Was he trying to curry favor? Or was there some other meaning? "If you have any difficulties or need anything, you can come to me." Matchless Wonder patted his shoulder for another minute and a half. Minute and a Half fell into a daze. He began to ponder the meaning of Eternal's words. Chapter 850. Matchless Genius casually said a few words and left. He was in a daze for a minute and a half. 5 Nights called out to him a few times before he came back to his senses and continued to count. Eternal and the others came over and glanced at them. They smiled and nodded at the two of them. They didn't say anything and continued to stay at the side. But Eternal's plan had already begun. Other than those who still had PK points, the others had all gone offline to rest. 5 Nights was going to be a monitor. Matchless Genius didn't seem to say anything to him, but he gave him some instructions in the message. 5 Nights felt bitter when he heard this. He had to be in charge of passing messages when Chinli went online and went offline. Did he have to stay online and not rest? The boss's mood fluctuated, and he spoke in a strange tone. 5 Nights didn't dare to say much. Seeing that the boss had left, he hurriedly said goodbye to 1 minute and a half second and ran over to Eternal's side. "Bro!" 5 Nights called out to Eternal. Actually, they hadn't officially introduced each other. "What is it?" Eternal didn't care about his mood. He was always friendly when he spoke to others. "That, Chinli is currently online after he gets drunk." 5 Nights said. "I know." Eternal smiled. "Once he goes offline, I'll have to trouble brother 5 Nights to tell me." Eternal knew 5 Nights' name. "But what if I go offline too?" 5 Nights asked the question he was concerned about. "Then we'll all go offline and rest." Eternal smiled as he replied. 5 Nights immediately understood. Without him, there wouldn't be any messages. Then everyone would get off work and rest. He didn't think that just having a friend on his list would have such an important position. 5 Nights' mood lightened up. "Why don't you leave me your contact details? When I'm online, you guys can rest more. As long as Chenli is no longer online, I'll immediately contact you guys." 5 Nights knew how to conduct himself. Currently, Eagle Studios personnel were falling apart. They didn't even have a target to build relationships with. It wasn't easy for him to find a group of people that his boss trusted. 5 Nights hurriedly expressed his goodwill. "That's great." Eternal didn't reject 5 Nights' goodwill. He immediately left 5 Nights' offline contact details. This war, which had the widest scope in history and spanned across 19 main cities of the parallel world, had temporarily entered a standstill. Although it covered a large area, the number of people involved was extremely small. No one noticed it at all. In the Moonlit Night City section of the forum, those who sided with the 10 Societies Alliance and those who sided with the studio were still fighting fiercely, but they didn't know that the flames of war had already shifted from Moonlit Night City. Even Yun Zhongmu felt rather helpless when he found out about the situation. He could guarantee that he had already stopped asking people to go on the forums to get back at them. Now that a bunch of people had suddenly popped up to speak for them, even he didn't know who they were. Sometimes, Things on the forums were even more inexplicable than in-game. Gu Fei had been waiting bitterly for a long time, and this battle had finally arrived. He had thought that he would receive requests for help from all over the place, but the Eagle Regiment was very cautious. They had retreated as soon as they realized something was wrong, and none of the warehouses were harassed. On the other hand, 3 more members of the Eagle Party had disappeared from the wanted list. With only 3 more members remaining, their PK points would be completely wiped out. Suddenly, Gu Fei remembered that in the previous battle, the warrior had killed a member of the 10 Societies Alliance. In that case, that fellow should have re-established some PK points. Although he didn't know his name, he could try it out one by one. Qianli went offline after getting drunk. Over at the warehouse, although Everlasting had accepted 5 nights' kindness, he didn't really go offline to rest. He had been accompanying his partner, who couldn't go anywhere and was wasting his PK points in the warehouse. At this time, there were still 3 people left, and 4 of them were leveling up. 5 Knights, who was taking inventory, rushed over from the other side. Did he just log off? Compared to 5 Knights' surprised and excited expression, Everlasting's expression was much calmer. Yeah. 5 Knights said, "Let's wait a few more minutes. What if he just went offline to use the toilet?" Everlasting wasn't in a hurry as he continued to play poker. 5 Knights didn't say much and went back to his work. About 10 minutes later, Everlasting took the initiative to ask him, "Is Qianli still there after getting drunk?" "No, he hasn't been online since then." 5 Knights said, "Good, it seems like our chance has come." Everlasting's spirit was lifted. "I'll go get him." After saying that, he teleported away and went offline to gather his companions. Some of the members of the Eagle Party had gone offline to rest, while others thought that they wouldn't be able to find Qianli drunk since they didn't have any PK points. Thus, they went about their own business in the game. At this time, they received Everlasting summons and gathered in groups of 4. A large number of scrolls had been prepared near each warehouse for teleportation. However, no one knew where to go except for Everlasting. Everyone went to the mailbox at the city gate and waited for Everlasting to mail the scrolls over. When the time came, they just had to follow the scrolls and teleport. Some people went from the leveling area to the mailbox at the city gate, while others went online from the revival point to the mailbox at the city gate. Everyone moved in an orderly manner, but their speed couldn't be considered fast. However, Everlasting wasn't anxious at all. As time dragged on, Qianli Drunk still didn't come online. This made him even more certain that Qianli Drunk had really gone offline to rest. Bowser's main city was supposed to be 5 Knights' first stop. The person in charge of this city was Xingru Xia, but Yun Zhongmu had personally led a group of people to stand guard here. 5 Knights had been killed twice in the blink of an eye, and Xingru Xia had cleverly chosen to hide under Yun Zhongmu's threats and promises. After Yun Zhongmu left, he returned to the tavern to discuss the plan with the Han family young master. At this time, only 3 players were left to wait silently. Suddenly, a white light flashed at the entrance of the street. It was the light of the teleportation circle. After the light faded, the 30 members of the Eagle Party were already rushing over murderously. "Eagle Party!" The 3 shouted in unison and quickly sent a message to Yun Zhongmu. "Retreat!" Yun Zhongmu ordered without hesitation. All 3 of them had teleportation scrolls with them. Twilight in the Cloud knew that the battle with the Eagle Party was going to be a very high-leveled one, so he had given everyone quite a few scrolls. He had invested all the money he had earned from helping Thousand Miles Drunk and the others into this area. The 3 of them immediately teleported away before the Eagle Party could reach them. However, Everlasting didn't dare to be careless. He ordered everyone to maintain their formation and pay attention to any player on the street. He was worried that the other party's teleportation was just a ruse. In fact, there were other spies waiting for them to step into the perfect trap. Then, with a single command, the other party would appear or teleport over to attack. The Eagle Party was cautious and vigilant. Finally, they reached the entrance of the warehouse. This was the most tense moment, and everyone gripped their weapons tightly. However, nothing happened. The players closest to the door had already pushed it open. Everyone entered one by one, but no one appeared. The warehouse in Bowser City was easily taken back. There's no resistance at all. Did they realize that they're not strong enough to fight us head-on, or do they have other plans? Everlasting thought about his next step as he made the scrolls for the warehouse. The members of the Eagle Party looked at him, waiting for his orders. Everlasting silently sent out the scrolls again before saying in a deep voice, "Next place." The teleportation portal was activated, and they arrived at a new main city. It was the same street, and there were 4 guards in front of the warehouse. When they saw the 30 players coming out from the teleportation portal, they shouted in unison, "Eagle Party! Charge!" Everlasting pointed his sword, and the Eagle Party charged toward the warehouse. This time, the 4 guards outside the warehouse didn't retreat as quickly as the previous 3 guards. Just when Yong Yuan felt that something was wrong, the news had already flashed. Everlasting had a premonition. He opened it and saw that it was indeed from 5 Nights. Chinli Drunk is online again. "There's an ambush!" Everlasting shouted. White lights flashed in front and behind them. It was also the light of the teleportation portal. The 10 Guild Alliance had already blocked off the street from the front and back. On the roofs on both sides of the street, the white light of the teleportation portal had also sent people over. Most of them were mages. There was the powerful drifting, and there was also the Chinli Drunk that Everlasting was trying his best to avoid. "Everyone from the Eagle Party, do you think you can escape this time?" Yun Zhongmu was in the front of the group. He walked out from the crowd and spoke in a majestic manner. Everlasting was calm. He could tell that the enemy's formation was very well planned. There were around 50 players in the front and back of the 2 groups. He didn't receive any information from the 10 Guild Alliance's players, which meant that they were Yun Zhongmu's most trusted brothers. Everlasting had already experienced the fearlessness of these people in Moonlit Night City. The blockade from the front and back wasn't something that they could charge out in an instant. Furthermore, the 2 groups were clearly defending to the death. The enemy's main attack would probably be the mages on the roofs on both sides of the street. The Eagle Party would be squeezed into a small space, and when the area of effect spells fell upon them, they would definitely have nowhere to run. "What do we do?" Just as Everlasting was thinking about this problem, he heard a voice from the back of the group. "Everlasting, do you still recognize us?" Everlasting turned his head and saw an archer, a female thief, and a priest that looked like both a man and a woman. The 3 of them were standing at the front of the group. The one who had shouted seemed to be the archer. His eyes were staring straight at the group. Everlasting smiled. This person had asked him if he recognized them, but his gaze wasn't on him. It was clear that he didn't know which one was Everlasting. Of course, this person was someone that they had met in the game before, but didn't know each other's true appearance. At this point, Everlasting was sure who the priest was. The Child Elite group was very famous. Every member of the Child Elite group was famous, and their leader, the Han family young master, was a legend. This was because he led a group of veteran experts, as well as a new expert from a parallel world, Chinli Drunk. Furthermore, he had the appearance of a fairy. These were all topics that gossiped about. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.